broadcasting from a very wet and miserable South Coast. Welcome one and all to episode 10 of Wrist Shot Week. 10 episodes. How is that even possible? After all this time, I mean, is it still exciting? Is it still engaging? That's really what I want to know. But I'm going to catch up with all of you in the chat, just waiting for everything to sync up. I think we're in. Sweet. Awesome. Welcome all of you. Let me try and get to the chat first. Let's see. Pete Smith, A Shot in the Dark. Williams Watches. Marcus, Thomas, Burnett, always a pleasure. Rich Buddy, great to have you here. Jamie, Jimmy, geez, who else? More Marcus. Dan occasionally likes things. I love your 57 Speedmaster. Welcome. Tom Austin, Eric Bell, Edwin. There's so many more of you. I cannot believe how wild the chat's going. Founder Timeless Capital, great to have you here. James, what a pleasure. I think I saw Megan is also in the chat, and Maynard, 121 click Bezel. I could just go on for hours. Great to have you all here. Thank you all for joining. Let me know if you can hear me. The usual call sign of one would help in the chat. Funnily enough, I don't know what would happen if you couldn't hear me. So yeah, let's try and keep, oops. Hold on a second, table of contents. No, we want contact sheet. No, what do we want? Always show sidebar, there we go. We are in. This is going to be a big show. I was quite overwhelmed. You can hear me? Fantastic. Welcome and thank you. Tag me in the chat if you want to hear me, if you want to address me with a question. First, happy 4th of July to all my American brothers and sisters out there. Hope you're having an amazing time. The weather has been terrible on the South Coast today in England. No idea why. We had such good weather, and then all of a sudden it just went to absolute garbage. So, it's fantastic having you all. Thank you all so much for joining. Hamilton Juan, there's more and more of you. Raymond, Gary Powers, Maynard, Clive. Clive asked me what my opinion is on the Tudor North Flag. It's a cool watch. I find it to be quite a nice retro transition. It's Tudor going in a different direction, or at least trying to be a bit unique with their approach. Talking about the new Black Bay. There'll be a video about that next week. Okay. Happy Independence Day, yeah, for sure. Dear Artifact. So let me just try and get this across first. There were so many submissions that submissions technically closed on Thursday. That's how busy it was. Look on the left-hand side of the screen, as we usually do. And as I scroll through, you can see there are a lot of watches, and the variety is impeccable, as always. Even 10 episodes in, it's just as exciting as it always has been, at least for me. I mean, I get to really collect and put all these pieces together for all of you. And so what else? So a lot of your submissions from Friday onwards haven't been saved, but will be saved for the next show. I was really overwhelmed. I think there were about 160 watches or 160 photos on the show. And as I say that, I'm trying to get the jersey off without interfering with the microphone. It's a Radiohead, yeah, for sure. Philip, there's so many more people who are joining. There's lots of new people who are joining as well. Absolute pleasure having you all here. Showcase Watches. I've watched your channel before. Fantastic. Great having you here too. Hans. Okay. So what's funny is that the theme somehow worked out to be a sports watch theme, which is something that we will see quite common shared between the pieces tonight or wherever you are in the world. But the variety is just phenomenal. Not just sports watches. We'll see a lot of dress. We'll see a lot of vintage and modern and retro and revival. And, you know, as it is, the variety is just off the charts. Flip and Zippo, thank you so much for the super chat. It's been 3 minutes of housekeeping. What else can I say? This week I did a video on Omega Speedmasters. It was a 20-minute video going through a whole range of modern pieces. And the one gripe that many people had was that it didn't address the Schumacher edition models. And I did that for a reason, because the Schumacher series of watches are going to get their own. So in the top right-hand corner of the screen, for anyone who is catching up on the show in the future, it will be linked for you there. And let's get right into it. First, talk about what I'm wearing. Of course, I'm wearing my little Seamaster. And a bit of trivia to get this discussion going. What's amazing, I've had this watch for like 4 months now. I still love it. But true to the originals, this was something I shared on Instagram this week. True to the originals, this watch has 5 separate Omega logos on it. And we look at the case back. There's 1. The clasp, there's 2. The crown, 3. The dial, and the crystal, 4 and 5. Now, because back in the day, they had separate manufacturers for all of these parts, there was no specified standard. And excuse all the schmutz on the glass and everything. This was taken outside. Because there was no standard for them to follow, every single logo that you see on the watch is slightly different, as very similar to the originals. So you can see this one's a bit longer. Because in the 50s, there was no template as of yet. You can see this has longer sides, but it's a bit rounded, has a little naiad symbol on the crown. The clasp is a bit more of the modern take, but also elongated. It's just fascinating. This watch continually fascinates me, and all the little crazy quirks and details. Too bad it's not a see-through case back, as 121 Click Bezel says. Yeah, I agree. That's one element. I guess it's true to the original, but this movement is beautiful. You know, you could find an aftermarket case back, which I might do in future. That's not a bad idea. But yeah, the variety is intense. So let's get away from what I've been dealing with, and let's have a look at, first I want to, before looking at Tom's watch, which is the cover photo of the show, T. Taylor, let's get started for sure. I want to also mention that a man by the name of Thomas, he's in the chat. Excuse the background, this is how the PNG image shows. We were talking about Philips watches last weekend, and lot 160 was this gorgeous 1675, and it was one of the cleanest examples. Funnily, I think the episode went on for about 4 hours, if I remember right. And even at lot 160, like well over 2.5, 3 hours into the show, I still thought this was a nice looking piece. Everything from original box, papers, presentation, all the paperwork and everything else, the crown and everything's nice and clean. The watch hasn't been polished. Anyway, one of our viewers, Thomas, who might be in the chat, he won this auction. So he is the now proud owner of a very good condition vintage 1675 that's all original. And I think we can all congratulate him there. And yeah, moving on. Congratulations, Thomas. And next to Tom, who sent in his, and as you can see, I had to doctor the image a bit for the cover photo with the hand. He picked up a Glashutte Original Speziomatic SeaQ this week, if I remember right. He said it was this week. And it was partly my recommendation, partly all of us who were discussing this watch a couple of weeks back. And it's so cool seeing another reissue dive watch on the scene. So similarly, it lines up with the Seamaster. They're all, I feel like they're in the same kind of family. This is the best reference we could look at. But it's just such a quirky piece from the 60s. I love the way the dial's been done. This whole theme, this watch is the cover child, or the cover photo of watches, reissue dive watches, which is another popular one that's been on the channel recently, that I will also link in the corner for future reference if anyone's catching up. But it's so nice seeing this piece in the wild and being worn. This looks like, I don't know what city skyline this is, but it looks pretty spectacular. So we can congratulate Tom Austin, if he's in the chat somewhere. I think I saw him earlier. He is now rocking quite a gem. Very interesting piece. And again, if you'd like to get a hold of me, I'm going to, if you'd like to get a hold of me, tag me in the chat and I'll be able to see it quicker. Megan's saying hi, looking forward to the show as always. Dad's watching in his TV room. Fantastic. I really hope he enjoys it. So the variety is incredible. And Megan, you sent in, Jacinta sent in some incredible pieces. It's just amazing. So again, congratulations, Tom, for this beautiful piece. It's such a gem. And let's get right into the show because there's lots of variety. We've been running for 8 minutes already, which is pretty good. And I think Clive had a good line. He said something about don't give a hoot, Glashutte. Pretty decent. Tom Austin says, I'd like to say that the loom on the bracelet, the loom and the bracelet are also mesmerizing. I'll definitely visit the Geo Factory Museum sometime. Because I remember you, once you invited, there was an interesting little caveat that was included when you picked up this watch, that you were invited to go for a factory visit or something along the lines of that. Yeah, congratulations, Tom. It is awesome. And it's really one of those, we're going to see a few of these during the show. There is also an RS65, one of my favorites in the dive category. And they all fall into this new area of reissue dive watches. So let's get started with A, as we tend to. First up, Agaki. I hope I got your name right. You sent in a 50s Zenith Caliber 40. Now, he's also a 3D artist, so he's in the same field as me. Essentially, it's a little bit different. He deals with more graphics and creatures and all kinds of creations. 3D artistry is amazing. The format and the programs you use are different. But he saw this piece on social media. If I remember right, this was one of his first watches that he ever picked up. And the real calling was he loved the fact that it had these Calatrava elements to them. And it's hard to deny. I mean, it's really so clean and clear. Let me pull this up on the screen. The variety is phenomenal. I can tell you, we're going to see lots of dress watches. Just in the beginning here, Ben, who we're going to see just now, he sent in a whole range of Amiga constellations from years apart. And yeah, talking about sports watches and this whole field, there's going to be a bit of dress here and there as well. Don't worry about that. So it's really nice seeing this piece. I love the yellow dial, the yellow gold case. If I'm not wrong, this is an 18 karat gold case as well. And he just loved the fact this was in Japan, if I remember right. He just loved the fact that this watch was just so clean and clear. Also has lyre lugs, so it has another element to it. And all in all, just clean, simple, basic. You can see the 50s motifs with the way the batons have been done on the watch. Beautiful hands, very, very crisp. I can imagine the size is about 36 mils. You can correct me if I'm wrong there, but overall, a really clean looking piece, apocalypse proof. Again, I'm going to try my hardest to catch up with all of you in the chat if I can, but if my name is tagged, I'll be able to see it easier. Otherwise, the text just scrolls so fast. I want to try something different and maybe detach the chat so I can see it separately. I don't know. Jamie, thank you for the super chat. Absolute pleasure. We're going to keep on rolling through because, you know, as it is, there are so many pieces. And would you believe we start very early with the Smiths Everest from Alex, one of my favorite pieces. We have spoken about this watch so much over the last, God, I'd like to say like 8 months at this point. But, you know, it's a gem. This is the latest model with a rivet bracelet, hollow end link style bracelet as well. 36 mil. These are becoming so sought after. Excuse me. Coffee hands warming up. These pieces are becoming sought after along with many others, but I really enjoy them. They're great watches to wear, and you know, it's a lot of fun. And then next to it, he also sent in a Black Bay GMT. Apologies for the pixelations. Again, it could be from my side. But talking about Black Bays and Tudor, come next week, I'm going to be bringing out a video about the new Tudor Blue Bay, whatever you want to call it. I'm sure many people have been quite disgruntled. It's a gorgeous looking watch, but it seems like social media is flooded. BS saying one of my favorites. Yeah, apparently Smiths is one of my favorites. You wouldn't believe that. And there's a few of them. Would you believe there are about 3 Smiths Everests just on this show? Yeah, so talking about Tudor and the GMT, I think we have a few more on the show. But the whole Black Bay family and what they've just released, it's worth talking about as the weeks go by. I think Tudor could sharpen up in a few places, though, with Diet Pepsi. This does look, I mean, it's amazing how the bezel looks almost black. Anyway, I've got to keep rolling because we've got so many watches on hand. This is also from Alex, and he sends in a Nodus diver called a Retrospect. Never heard of this. It's a micro brand, if I'm not wrong. Please correct me there. But I do like the polar aesthetic, the white on almost champagne. God, there are some phenomenal watches and some great stories, too. If some of these watches don't interest you, some of the stories behind them, I can tell you. We're going to get to some pocket watches later on. And I should also add, at the end of this video, you will see a surprise from Russell. Russell received 2 really, really interesting watches this week. And it's a nice way to cap off the show, as always. They're watches that we haven't seen in the wild very much as of yet. Divisive watches for sure, but yeah, it's going to be fun. Notice are an American micro, I think, and that's from my Allen 999. Yeah, well, I mean, it's an interesting looking watch. I do enjoy the sharp batons, being someone who owns a Seamaster. It's amazing how dials were transplanted and shared around in those early years, and those inspirations are being pushed through nowadays. Mesh bracelets, which is always a treat. You're going to see a few sharp mesh bracelets as the show continues. But thank you for all of these, Alex. This next piece that I want to show, this is from Alan. Alan has sent in the same watch quite often before in the past, but the story behind this piece is that it's an Amiga Flightmaster. This was just a nice skyline of the cockpit view. He has orbited the world over the course of this last month, rocking a Flightmaster. This is a vintage piece, and you can see it's experienced a lot of life, wear and tear. We have featured it a few times on the show. But 3 flights, 40 hours, 4 days. And this watch has been traveling extensively. I just find it to be the most interesting looking dial because it really does look like it's been left in a lake for a couple of weeks, you know? And interestingly, these Flightmasters seem to have all patinaed in a similar way. There's lots of examples just like this. I don't know if that's to do with the cases. They don't have any screw-down crowns, so maybe that has to do with water rating. I really don't know, but interesting age and wear. There was also mention in the chat about the guitar in the background. See, I can't dabble too long with that, but this looks like a custom, maybe a PRS. We should do guitars and watches. That'd be a lot of fun. I'm so down for that because I can contribute. But yeah, this Flightmaster is a beast. It's seen a lot of life, a lot of wear. But the story behind it is amazing. I have no idea what this chart is about. Speaking of which, navigation. As of Thursday next week, there's going to be an interesting take on the longitude problem. Don't know if you've heard that story, but the longitude problem was something that a watchmaker solved. That'll be coming out next week, Thursday, which I'm currently editing at the moment. But I love this cockpit view. It's so nice seeing the skyline and mountains, and he's way above the clouds here. Fantastic. It's amazing. I mean, can you imagine sitting in a plane? For those of you who have vertigo, must be quite freaky. Okay, so let's carry on through to the next handful of pieces, and we're going to get a bit more diverse. This comes from Ben. This is a different Ben to the next Ben we're going to be seeing. But Eric Bell saying Harrison H2. John Harrison, that's it. You guys got it. I don't want to give the full story away. I love this watch. So this is called a rectangular Royal Oak, steel and gold. And Ben has a Instagram handle, which I'm going to put into the description right now for you. It's Steely, hold on, SELLY.gold. So if you are on Instagram, follow this gent. He seems to really like collecting these pieces, predominantly rectangular models. And a quartz AP rectangle, I can imagine these pieces must be quite sought after in a way, but also very underground, unique. Yeah, and I just love, I really find that there's a more complementary nature with how the rectangle incorporates with the bracelet and the links and the connections there. There seems to be some kind of relationship shared between the parts, a little bit more congruent compared to your standard rounded and octagonal forms. Don't buy Tudor. Oof. Derek, I mean, really talking about what's been going on. And one thing that's blown me away is that it's all over social media, and the market is flooded with them. And it's unreal how all of a sudden the pieces are on such great demand, and suddenly the blue dials, the blue watches have just been pushed everywhere. And you think to yourself, where is this demand being held back? What's the deal? Are they deliberately pushing these pieces out? They're already up for secondhand. They're already up in the gray market for sale with huge premiums on top of them. Yeah, I don't know. Dan, some more money towards your Tesco alcohol. I'm drinking an Australian red. It's a really nice Merlot tonight for a change. I've already hit my coffee, so I've done that. And now we're getting straight into the booze. And more of you who are joining, thank you all so much for being a part of the show. Marty, Jamie, I've said hi to a few of you already. Juan is in. Juan sent some gorgeous pieces in. Gorgeous pocket watches we'll see in a second. Social media is the new Bezel world. Eric, you've hit it on the head there. That's an AP. Yeah, Jimmy, this is one of the most peculiar in the line. It's a quartz model, but it has such interesting elements around it. Anyway, I've got to carry on. Now we're jumping to the next Ben, who sent in a series of Constellation watches. Aussies make really good wine, Megan. I completely agree. Ben sent in the most impeccable set of Constellations that you'll probably ever see in one place. And I'm so happy and proud to share them on the show. I did a video all about the Globemaster and tried to walk through the history of the Globemaster, looking at the Constellation lines and development. And it's incredible seeing these examples that we're going to look at now. So this is a very typical 50s era with a pipe pan. You can see the age on the dial. There's a few distinct details, like you see how the batons are arranged. The pipe pan dial is the giveaway. The lugs are pretty typical of the time. I love the beads of rice bracelet. These photos are just phenomenal. As we go through, Ben, I can't thank you enough for sending these in because above and beyond the Constellations, there's one piece that is one of my favorites that we're going to see in a second. So next Constellation, this is all in, I'd imagine, about 14 karat gold. Next up, another 50s Constellation. You'll see this to be quite a continual trend. I'm just assuming these are 50s pieces from what I've learned over time. He didn't give me any details about the watches. I kind of had to scrounge. Anyway, another pipe pan. So there's also a 50s era, typical little Constellation star. We have this hexagonal nut on the crown. It's really clean and clear, simple. Next up, one of my favorites. Check this out. I love it. I love when a collector can just share one specific model, very much like Juan does with his Hamiltons that he sends in. This version, I called it the 50s with the teeth. Look at those batons and how they've been done. The bracelet is so clean. The lugs, it's all just typical 50s. Pulse, what do we call it? Sorry, pole router dial. And then look at the texture on the dial. Got this bubbling effect going on. Don't know how that happened, but I just think it's interesting, fascinating to see these watches in line. Another one coming up. I would imagine this is another 50s. We're transitioning. It's not so much of a deep pipe hand anymore. There seems to be more of like a late 50s variant. It's very difficult to clarify, because when we transitioned from the 50s and the 60s, we saw a distinct change in a few places. Talking about beer and everything else, Foster's beer, and it's great. Demetrius, great having you here. You sent in an awesome piece, your Smiths on the mesh. Carrying on through from this to the next constellation, and I really dig these. Now we're getting into the 60s, where we start seeing these cushion-style cases with the fluted bezels. And in my Globemaster video, which will probably be linked in the corner of the screen here, it looks at how the cushion case really became the cornerstone, along with the fluted bezel. All of these elements were extrapolated and used in the development of the Globemaster as it came to be. What does pipe hand dial mean, Dan says? Well, it's pretty simple. If we look at the dial, the best example is probably these 50s variants. Notice how the dial was pushed out the way it is, almost towards you. You can see there's depth to it. I don't know how the collectors came up with this name. I'm sure they're much better Omega enthusiasts in the chat who can explain it in more detail. But I always thought it meant pipe hand. I didn't realize it meant pipe hand in the beginning. It's quite a tongue twister. But it's just essentially the way the dial has been pushed outwards to give a 3D effect. Stylistic choice, I don't know what the reason was really, but it was one of those elements that has really made it such a piece. So the 60s watches look phenomenal. I think the gold version looks stunning. Check the crystal, the actual lens on the crystal looks fantastic. And look at the logos. Notice this is more of your 60s era logo that we expect to see, late 50s-ish. And then we transition to the more modern variant. Even with these two pieces, which are virtually identical, you can see the chopping and changing between elements. The text on the dials have changed, like the constellation here, the star, next to the constellation here and the star. Tell you, Omega was all over the shop. Okay, then I call this, I don't know what to call it. I called it the constellation dish. This feels to be a more modern piece from, I would imagine, the 80s kind of era. Very tuxedo-esque. 12 pieces of the pie, Megan, for sure. Imagine 12. That's a very good point. Thank you, 121 Click Bezel. Great collection. It's nice seeing them, must say. And Ben, is this, please tell me this is your collection, Ben. Be nice to know. Ben Space Vulture, who's in the chat. So I think I have a feeling this piece is more like from the 80s. Maybe it's a modern variant. I find it very hard to tell. Shape of crusty pastry on the top of the pie. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, moving next. Okay, so next up we have a Seamaster. Also, I don't know why I called it Constellation. It's a Seamaster, and I would imagine this is right around the early 50s, because you recognize the case. If you know the 1948 reissue that they brought out, it isn't your collection. Oh, pity. There are lots of Bens in and around the place. This is very much your 1948 case that has been used as the example. But we have this honeycomb dial, gorgeous gold elements everywhere. I also really enjoy the pole router-esque dividing lines on the seconds. It's beautiful, the texture. And I don't know so much about the strap. It looks like snakeskin. I could be wrong, but it kind of reminds me of snakeskin, if anyone knows, anyone has experience. Okay, next up, in a similar vein, we have this Longines. And I'm going to say waterproof, because what's coming up next, in the next few seconds, is a very interesting watch that I want to focus on for a second. Catching up with all of you in the chat, and while I do that, I'm going to take a hit of the wine and also drop a Fisherman's Friend. Proud sponsor of the show, cherry flavor, my favorite. Let's see what else is going on in the chat. Strap should live, an exotic pet shop. Dan says, I have a Constellation tuning fork left to me from my grandfather. Unfortunately, he passed away recently from COVID. Wow, that's hectic, Dan. I'm sorry to hear that, man. I really am. And again, I should address, I really hope you're all well, doing well. Look after yourselves, looking after yourselves, and taking the right procedures, and with regards to what's going on. I think the way the world is unlocking so quickly is a bit of a mistake, and there's going to be a bit of a bounce around. But yeah, it's just me. Seems like people are blissfully unaware of what's been going on. And again, to all of you who are joining from the States, I really hope you're having an amazing 4th of July. So this Longines, I would imagine this is late 30s, early 40s. And I have a feeling it uses the same waterproof case that we saw in one of the first Omega models, waterproof models. But as we know, Longines and Omega shared many elements back in the day, and we can just imagine Omega on the dials of these, and they'd be virtually the same. How much does this look like a reverso to you? It's incredible. Blued hands. I love the size, the styling of the piece. And then we move further in, and we have a Eames. Let's have a look. If I can spin this, does this look any better? Longines Eames. I don't know if this is a reissue. I feel like it is. Maybe, maybe not. But as we know, the Eames model was made famous by, we saw it in the film Dunkirk with, what's his name? Tom Hardy. And the story behind this was Eames was a captain. He was a pilot, I think, and he really helped in the development of navigation. And he wanted this idea of a bezel inside it, on the outside, should I say. One of the first examples of a rotating external bezel on a watch. Nice RAF watch, as Jimmy says. These were the first RAF issued pieces back in the day. And I just love how we have such a great collection of small pieces in this lineup here. What else was I going to say? I think the reference is something like CK2922 or 2919. I botch it all the time. CK2919, something like that, I think. Looks stunning. And I learned something else. This little crown on the side here is to help lock the bezel in place. But I just love it. The elements, the dividing up on the dial. We've seen a review video on this. Might as well drop this in the corner as well for a future date. The Smith's Air Ministry pays tribute to these watches and even has a patent number. Funnily enough, the reason why we haven't seen a Smith's variant of this piece is because it is held by a patent, as we can see right here. So Eddie cannot touch this style of watch, even though he really wants to. These watches are like 35 millimeters, can you believe? And then moving next to one of my favorites in this set. And for those of you who know anything about Omega's history in the water, this is what's called a Omega Marine. Made in 1932, technically one of the first waterproof watches in the world, along with a few others. I think around the 30s, we also had Panerais and stuff. One of the first, should I say, first waterproof Omegas, next to the, we now know the bubble back oysters from Rolex. But basically how this watch worked was it had an external case that you just strap the actual movement and dial inside. And there we go. These were issued to Navy servicemen in and around the 30s, the 40s. And I saw a super chat a second ago. Juan, thank you so much, Juan. I cannot wait to get to the pieces that you sent in, especially that pocket watch. Absolutely gorgeous. Oh, it's incredible. And yeah, I've got to catch up with all of you here. I don't know what's going on in the chat. There's chats about lawsuits and pieces with stepped lugs. Very interesting, right, Megan? And thank you, Flippin, for highlighting the super chat to me. So a really interesting piece, and just all the elements, like the open 9, if we get right in on the dial, the rail track around the dial, the beautiful hands, we see how this transitioned into the 40s, where it was just enlarged, basically. And yeah, it's amazing. Parisian walkways. Does that have to do with the way the dial's arranged with the minute track? Yeah, it's great. Really is nice. Never seen one of these on the show before, but I thought, well, ever being worn by someone. But it's pretty amazing when it comes to a piece of history. If we look at Omega's history in general, this is their first ever attempt at a waterproof watch, 1932. And the next real step was the 57 Seamaster that we saw earlier in the show, which is incredible, just incredible. Now this DeVille, I don't know what it is, but it is very Baroque. It looks to be something from the 70s or the 80s. I would imagine it's in yellow gold. And this is the last submission that Ben sent in. But it was so nice seeing this piece in its full glory. And we'll find that as we go through the show, we're going to see samples of miniature collection reviews, which is sometimes a pleasure, sometimes a pain with the amount of watches that come in. But as always, it's a treat seeing the variety. Let's talk about Gary Moore. Are we talking about Les Pauls? Gary Moore was Les Paul, 1959. Yeah, Les Pauls are amazing guitars. I don't know if that's what's going on in the chat. I kicked the Rolex can a while, couldn't do it. Yeah, I don't know. Everyone's chatting about whatever else. So really nice looking piece. This dial is quite unique. I have no idea how they did it, but the printing eerily reminds you of something from like the 70s era, 70s and 80s. Nice shirt to go with the DeVille as well. Yeah, I agree. Ben likes to color code and match. So Ben, you've sent in some incredible watches. It's so nice seeing this level of variety in one place. Everything from 60s to 50s to my favorite one and only, Omega Marine. And then we're going to jump to Glashutte, who is in the chat, I think. I saw him earlier. And he received this on Father's Day from his family, Doxa 300T. And he did specify in the email that the bracelet is one of the most comfortable bracelets he's ever worn. And as far as watches go in this line, it's amazing what Doxa is doing. They're really getting to play around with a lot of elements, have fun with the pieces they make, but they're also just so versatile. Real sports divers from the 70s, as most of us know. I don't think Glashutte is in the chat, but it's great having him sharing these pieces in. Megan's saying, interesting Omega piece. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. Really, Ben sent in a great selection. Demetrius saying, so many watches I've never seen before. What a wonderful show. Trust me, Demetrius, you haven't seen anything yet. It's going to get much worse. All I can say is at the end of the show, you're going to see some great pieces. I've saved a few at the end. Okay, another hit from the wine, and we're going to carry on. I think what makes this piece a little bit more versatile overall is that it understands the use of color a bit nicer compared to the standard, the bright orange or the bright yellow variants. This piece with the navy blue and the orange highlights in areas makes it a bit more practical. You can use this bezel to time your depth. I don't actually know how these bezels work. If I'm being honest, I don't know how to read these when it comes to feet and all of that. I know the inside of the bezel is used for your running seconds, your countdown minutes. But yeah, nice piece. And Glashutte, always a pleasure seeing what you send in. More questions. Megan's saying, I got a message from Glashutte sending his apologies that he couldn't be. No problem. Party today. I mean, he's in the States, so he'd be. I can imagine most Americans are going to be going out this evening or this afternoon, being July 4th. Happy Independence Day when you broke away from the crown. Congratulations as well. Pretty good move from you guys. What wine am I drinking? Dan asks. It's a Australian Merlot. Don't know the name. Really nice though. Rich. Flippin' Zippo. Yeah, beer time. Great. So, Doxa, 70s classic. And then we're going to jump into a different kettle of fish from Brian, who sends in did I say a different kettle of fish? We're going to be dealing with one. 5512 Submariner. This would be a 70s era variant, I would imagine. You can see that being a chronometer rated model, it has the 4 lines of text. I don't remember the story that he sent behind this, but it's always great seeing a 5512. I think this was in line with our show that we had the other week with the Philips auction going on. That was nuts. I can tell you, Mark is saying, it's hilarious seeing a Brit congratulating Americans. Yeah, I'm technically South African, but I've grown up in a colony all my life, technically, coming out of Cape Town and then moving to the UK. So I guess I have a bit of background there. But it's amazing. I mean, the American War of Independence, 1776, etc., was pretty good. I loved my history back in the day. Still love studying, as you'll probably see in the video that's coming out on Thursday. And yeah, talking about this piece, 5512, great condition. I don't know the story about it altogether, but it looks really clean and simple. Submariner. There aren't many Submariners on the show, actually. Philips auction was absolutely mad. Dan, I don't know if I'm going to do that again because that really nearly killed me. I was out for the count until Tuesday. The hangover only really kicked in on Monday, and I really felt like I was hit by a truck. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, who sits down and talks through 200 watches in a single show? Ridiculous, ridiculous. And Megan's saying it's a 300T Caribbean. Did I not mention the reference? That was stupid of me. Doxa 300T, which is, I should have mentioned it, but one element I love is the way the text has been done. This is also featured in the Reissue Diver video that's going to be shared often on this page as a recommendation in the corner of the screen. Yeah, going to carrying on through. There was mention about South Africa again. Marcus saying, South Africa, Marcus Agrippa. You were a great ruler, Marcus. I have some friends from there, mainly Boers and Portuguese like me. I have a great Portuguese friend from Mozambique. It's based in Lisbon at the moment. And it's amazing. It's amazing how we all travel around in the world. So Brian, thank you for sending this in. And next we're going to jump to another Brian. I don't know if it's the same, but he sends in, maybe this is the same. He sends in a Nomos Orion. Now, admittedly, this is the only Nomos that I really like in the family. But what's even nicer is the Beads of Rice bracelet that's equipped with it. I love the way these original bracelets were done. We've seen them being reintroduced recently. Some brands are being able to address it very well. And overall, the Nomos Orion, I really enjoy elements like the way the lugs have been done, the simplicity of the dial. It's very, very German, which I dig. Similarly, I love how the bracelet just integrates there. There's a good relationship between the parts. So it's nice seeing this featured on the show. And we actually see another Nomos later on, believe it or not. There's lots of German. Oh, we're going to see some good German watches later on. Don't worry, there's some Langes, there are some Pateks. You'll see them all as we develop through. It's all down to name, alphabetical order, as we roll through the pieces in the selection. And there's talk about 121 click bezel saying, if Nomos was just a bit bigger, I have an 8-inch wrist, so it's hard to wear a classic dress. Oof. But I mean, there is something about smaller dress watches that I think has an elegance to itself. We can talk about that in a second. I think it keeps to that time period. And yeah, Thomas also saying the Nomos is my favorite, the Orion. It is gorgeous. It really is just clean, simple. One of my favorites. There's a few, but there's one very specific model. I think it was a collaboration exercise where the batons are different sizes all around the dial. There's also a version that has a pink dial, which looks stunning. So yeah, scary strap, Ben says. Or scary strap. I don't know what you meant there. 73 MAF. I really feel like, so I think I mentioned this in the beginning. Moving on, Brian, thank you for sending this in. To Bruno with a Glycine Airman and a 78 Triumph Spitfire. If I'm not getting this wrong, I'm pretty sure it's a Spitfire. Yes, okay, cool, I listed it. Great seeing an Airman in the wild. So I stopped saving submissions as of Thursday. That's how bad it got. I think I have about 150 watches to show all of you today. And there are probably about 50 more in my email that I haven't gotten to. There comes a time when I just have to throw my arms up and say, that's enough. Enough's enough. I have to sign off. So you'll see at the bottom of the description, normally on Friday when I put this video up, I put the premiere up for 24 hours. You'll see in the description, I say submissions are open or submissions are closed. And generally you can read through that whether or not I'll be saving any more for the show. But it gets intense, I tell you, as you will see as we develop through this. Hearing aid beige Spitfire, Eric Bell said. I do not know that reference. That is way away ahead of my time. But Glycine Airman, it's a classic. This being the modern revival with a larger case. It's about 40 millimeters, right? Stunning piece. It's so busy. My Watches of Vietnam video looks at this, and I talk about how these were so favored by pilots back in the day, even though the watch was only 35 millimeters, it was tiny. And it's incredible seeing just how they worked so well back then. And Bruno, BDev is in the chat. I bought that Glycine and sold it a week later. Ooh, that's rough. Couldn't get used to the white GMT hand. Bought a Glycine DC4 Purist, but it has to go back to Joma Shop. We haven't been dealt very well. We haven't been dealt a good set of cards there. Bruno, I'm sorry to hear that. But yeah, this is a very distinct and different model for sure. Pilots can really appreciate this piece, I think, because of its history and background. But I find it to be such a quirky watch. There are a few of them. I would say the Doxa also falls in line as being one of those quirky pieces of the time. But anyway, it's great seeing this coupled with the car. It's a nice pairing. And there's a few more people in the chat I need to get to. But first, we're jumping to Bud to Stud next. And he sends in, because of the last show that we had, wrist shot. Again, Bruno, thank you for sending this in. The last wrist shot week show we had, he said, why aren't there any APs on the show? And he thought he would help even the playing field. Funnily enough, we have so many APs as we go through. You've already seen one. We've got offshores, we've got the works as we develop through the show. Okay, I'm going to scroll down and reach the chat. There's lots of comments going on here. Anyone that's driven a British sports car has pushed a British sports car. Yeah, I must admit, 121 click bezel, I haven't driven a British sports car. Not that I can think of. No, I can't fit in them. That's the truth. Even Lotuses, even Lotus Elises, the modern ones, I can't fit in the cars. And it's a struggle, I can tell you. I have a few friends who are upholsterers sitting in their cars. It's really funny seeing the size difference back in the day, because people were generally smaller back in the 50s and beyond. Anyway, Glycine Airman, the Spitfire. I've got to carry on with the chat. So, trio of APs. Mr. Perpetual saying, make sure you really inspect Joma Shop watches. I've heard some bad stories from Joma Shop that they don't even supply the papers with the watches for the first 6 months or something, if I'm not wrong. And that's why they discount the prices of them so much. But yeah, it's across the world postage. I mean, they're based in New York, right? So anything can happen. I think one thing that I've learned from my experience of, dealing with a few watches, not many, but buying local is pretty good. And you save yourself a lot of hassle, to put it that way. So these three pieces, I just called it a piece set, but I really enjoy them. Of the three, I must say this rose gold chronograph is gorgeous. It really does look the business. The offshore is probably my least favorite of the three. And then the jumbo, you can never go wrong with. It's just something about funnily, I looked at a video of my own the other day. Never do it. I made a video about AP, love it or hate it, and discussed the design of these watches. And poignantly, I mean, when I was doing write-ups 10 months ago, there must have been some spark or inspiration behind the scenes. But I said that what I really appreciate about how they developed the chronographs in this line is that all of the elements, I mean, looking at the jumbo, what makes the AP such a unique, no, we're getting ahead of ourselves. What makes the Royal Oak such a unique animal is that it uses these jagged lines everywhere. There is such a good relationship between the sharpness of the elements, the way the hexagonal screw of the hexagonal nut of the crown works, the way the bezel works, all the screws on the bezel themselves. And that kind of relationship you shouldn't tamper with. But what they did so well here when they transitioned to the chronograph was they just accentuated it by increasing the elements like the hard edges on the pushers, the way the subdials have been arranged. I mean, I think they would kill it if the subdials were also octagonal, but I think there's just such a nice usage of space on the dial as well. Offset date looks fantastic. Beautiful color. I love the brown and rose gold. I'm not a gold wearing person, but I would wear this watch, which is something I wouldn't say often. And then the one thing that just detracts me from this piece is the size, not much else. I think as far as a sports model goes, it's a nice looking piece. Really great use of elements. How they expanded the, I'm saying tapisserie dial, I hope I got that right, how they expanded the size of everything, in relationship to everything else. There's been a good attempt of balancing out elements here. So you can see this model's 42, this model's 44. Also really enjoy the way they've done the pushes here, even though it's completely counter to what made the Royal Oak so interesting back in the day. This piece is much more for the modern enthusiast, you know what I mean? Navy Blue Monster saying that the offset date is off-putting. I don't mind it very much. I think it's all down to how you view the dial. What I believe is when you're wearing a watch like this, you wouldn't notice it as much as you would think. The thing is, it does stand out when you see it up close in an image like this. But remember, these watches are really small. Seeing it on your wrist, I think it would hide pretty well in the background. But yeah, amazing set of watches. And I don't appreciate the fact that the hype is so high up there, but they really are gorgeous. I love the fact that they have their own identity and they share this relationship between each other. But there was talk, I saw mentioned by Dan saying, does the AP code 1159 get an unfair bad rep? I ripped into it, but I mean, they did some amazing stuff. The case design is phenomenal. The case design is great, really is good. The movement, exceptional. The perpetual calendar of the line is gorgeous. I'm going to move to the next pieces here from Bud. He sends in his Aquanaut on bracelet and another jumbo shot together. And we get to appreciate these two watches together so well here. Bud, thank you for sending these in. The code 1159, I don't know what they were trying to do. It's so important when it comes to working on a brief to sit back and say, who is this going to be for? Who is the buyer? They clearly wanted to bring in more classical influences because AP, as we know, is a brand that built the most amazing dress watches back in the day. They still do. And they wanted to bring that heritage in line and fuse it into what made the Royal Oak so special with the way the case was done and all of that. And they might have overextended their reach in a few places, but constantly going back and referring back to details. I think what would have really made the watch sing even more. Sadly, I can't bring it up because we would just take the direction of the show all over the place. If they just addressed the dial differently, the way the numerals were done, the way the hands were addressed, just a few minor touches and improvements there, they would have made a killer, a really great looking watch. Done something with a bracelet maybe. You know, we just saw that beads of rice bracelet. If they incorporated that into the mix, a more classical feel, it's a very divisive thing, but yeah, we can talk about that at a later stage. I should do a video on it again, a retrospective. Sydney Snyder, all of you guys who are just chatting in the chat, going away, enjoy yourselves. I hope it's great. I hope it's a great conversation. I'm missing so many of them. And Megan saying the AP has a killer bracelet. Yeah, they really do. That's one thing about the AP bracelet is it's conforming, but it's also smooth and also very rigid, robust. Seeing these two watches side by side, the Aquanaut, it's really growing on me, actually, as far as a watch that I believe is inspired by military spec field watches. It has this field watch approach to how the minute track has been done, and also just the coffee brown way the dial's been approached, next to the blue that we know from the Jumbo. On the bracelet, does it work as well? Technically, it was never supposed to be introduced with one. It was always on a rubber strap. But I mean, if it's your cake, if you really enjoy it, then by all means, indulge. And all of you in the chat, I see lots of tags going on here. Dan saying that I actually like the 1159 blue sunburst. Yeah, my favorite is that perpetual calendar. I love the way they've done the sub dials. Really nice balance. It's not about the cost, it's about the joy it brings you, the love for the horror. Yeah, that's it. I mean, I've never been someone to talk about watches when it comes to money, maybe apart from the Philips auction show that we saw last week. But it's all down to appreciate what I hope to instill is appreciating design, elements that maybe didn't stand out to you at first. And yeah, as we continue through, you'll see that in more detail. So Bud, thank you for sending these in. My favorite in this set, I love this rose gold variant. I mean, brown is one of my favorite colors. I would totally be wearing this watch, even though I don't wear gold. And I have actually tried on a yellow gold, one of these chronographs, and it's so heavy. It's so heavy. Okay, so let's move on through to the next set. This is from Cameron, and he sends in a Limes diver. I've never heard of this brand before, but if anyone can please clarify what this is, it's a German-made brand. It might be a micro brand. I don't know the story, if this is an old or a new model. It'd be nice to hear a bit of background, if it is in fact a micro brand. And I'm catching up with all of you in the chat again, if I can. Not often you see the Aquanaut on a bracelet. So apparently, Megan, they're very desirable, right? But they also, at the same time, lots of people don't find them very visually appealing. Many people just prefer the generic rubber. It's great. It's a nice looking selection. And moving through, my stream is low quality anyway, seeing it in HQ. I hope this isn't bad resolution. You guys can see this okay. But it has a tough decision every day, for sure, 73 math. Look at the date position on the Nautilus. I don't want to scroll back up, but I see the Nautilus being it's at the 15, at the 3 o'clock position, right? Okay, I'm going to carry on through down the chat. Zane's in the chat. Great to have you here, sir. So Limes Diver. Never heard of this brand before, but I enjoy the way that the dial has been addressed with the double batons at the top. The quarters have a bit of a wider format to them. I'd imagine this watch, it looks almost like it's made from titanium. Also enjoy that he's paired the orange with the orange here. This looks like a sketchbook of some kind. Yeah, it's great. I don't know if this is the same Cameron. It is. So Cameron, if I remember right, is a photographer or a photographist. And he loves orange. So you can see that that's translated through. This being a SeaQ Pro Specs, I didn't give it the name. Looks to be kind of like a samurai. No, it's not a samurai. I couldn't mean my references, I tell you. A PVD variant, orange minute hand matching the shirt, Pro Specs. I really enjoy how they've done the logos on the Pro Specs models. It's very distinct and sharp. Let me try and highlight and focus on this. Pro Specs ending with an X is unique. You see that it's actually a P and an S shared between. It's a very good exercise in understanding a logo. Lots of people don't like it, but I find it a fascinating approach. Really is effective because from a distance you just see an X. And there's a question asked by 73 saying, is it a mod? I really don't know. I really don't know. But moving through, he sent in a few more. Our beloved Zins that we've spoken about, this being a 556. And yeah, it's one of those pieces. I really look forward to talking about Zin again as a brand and the development and the background and focus in on more unique pieces. Sumo, thank you, Navy Blue Monster. I was going to get there eventually. But overall, Zin, this many people appreciate as being such a great one watch. And talk about cameras, as Dear Artifact says. So Cameron is a photographist. He does this professionally, and he loves his. He should actually share some photos of the cameras full front. But he sent in another. I called this, what is this name? It's a Genuand. Oh my goodness, I'm going to botch that name. But this to me feels like another one of those Zin-inspired pieces from the time. This being, it's also German through and through. There's a nice camera. It looks like a Fujifilm. Don't even get me started with cameras, because I don't know cameras at all. I'll be honest there. There's some areas that I really don't know a lot of in cameras. There's a lot of areas that I don't know a lot of. Just catching up with all of you in the chat. Wearing a 103 ST, awesome radio, Rest Deutschland. Great to have you here. And love the 556. Yeah, it's great. So this brand, I was thinking of another name. It reminds me of Fortis. Doesn't this remind you of a Fortis piece from the same kind of family? And again, we talk about how the development worked and how Hanhart really established the idea of a chronograph back in the day, in the 50s, and how French then used that idea with their Type 20s, and the development's amazing. Great seeing this piece. Just typical German design, how everything's approached. And then moving through to a Stover. I assumed it was a Stover 40. This is the last shot from Cameron. The onion crown, I think, is such a gem. Nice resolution as well. We can really enjoy the details here. The blued hands, the way the numerals are set on the dial. It's a great looking watch. And they've really been able to approach the Flieger in a modern way. You know, geared it up for the modern, let me try and get this fitting the frame better, geared it up for the modern enthusiast, where it's a bit more wearable and approachable, you know. Looks similar to the Fortis. Did I say Fortis, Megan? I feel like it's just the same. And Ed's saying Fortis dial, Zin bezel. They all share the same kind of family. Here we go. Cedar saying that, Cedar Canoe, Helmut Zin owned the Genuand brand until he died at 102. Holy smokes. He must have had a good diet. It's amazing. Germans know what they were doing. Yeah, they sure do, Joe. One thing I love is that you can distinctly determine and understand a German watch after a few seconds. Not just the dial layout and everything, but the way they've approached contrast. Contrast is key with so many watches. Neville, great having you here. And there's talk about apartments and everything. Zane's going at it. Yeah, so it's fantastic. Cameron, thank you for sending these in. We've been running the show for 52 minutes. We're doing pretty well. I think this might be a sub 3-hour show if all works out well. Now, CD, his name is CD. He sends in a collection. And he gave me a full story about all these watches. But again, I'm someone who, when it comes to saving all of these pieces, I pretty much name them and file them away. I don't spend too much time looking at it. So apologies, CD, for not collating and saving all the details that you shared. But I remember him saying something like the Longines was his first. And he just has a great selection here. So we just look at the top row. We have a professional Esselite, which is a gem. This Longines piece reminds me of a flagship model. Don't know so much. SeaQ, this being an SKX 007. No, 009 with a Pepsi. And then we have an Explorer 2, this being his second Rolex that he picked up. And apart from the size, which I think is a little bit beefed up, a little bit too much, I think the relationship shared between the bezel and the dial could have been tightened up just ever so slightly. Great looking piece though. I love, when I get a Rolex one day, it's going to be a white dial Rolex. I'll tell you that much, everyone. And moving through, we get a few more pieces. So he has a Tudor Pepsi GMT, which we'll talk about in a second. I want to chat about, geez, they're actually 3 Rolexes. He's got his Explorer, and he's got an Oyster Perpetual blue dial with a SeaQ, a vintage 70s SeaQ by the looks of things. That's fantastic. I really enjoy the selection. And Tudor. I think we should just address, we have kind of addressed the Tudor brand already and what they've just released this week. And being someone who's now on social media, it's insane how flooded the market seems to have been because of this new release. This, I don't know what they call it, the Blue Navy, right? Some people are really bleak that they didn't bring out something else. I know Dear Artifact is one, and I address that in a video that comes out on Tuesday. I'm not very nice on the blue dial variant, even though I think it looks gorgeous. oof, I kind of rip it to shreds in a few places. I rip Tudor, the brand, apart a little bit. I say some rude things. Nice collection, though. I really enjoy it. Everything from, I mean, he has all his bases covered here. As far as a Rolex selection goes, Blue Bay 58. I called it Blue Balls 58 for a while. It was going to be the title of the video, but I dropped it. Thought it was not PG enough. As far as Rolex, I wish you'd put the Rolexes together in this set. Put the Seiko next to the Seiko. But seeing these three, you have your bases covered. This GMT complication, plus the blue dial Oyster Perpetual. Funny, I've been looking at a white dial 114-200, which is actually a 34 millimeter Oyster Perpetual. I think it looks gorgeous. Oyster Perpetual might be a model I pick up if I'm lucky. But again, typical 214-270, 39mm Explorer. It's a great set of pieces. It's what I also enjoy is that it's not a collection that shouts. So it allows you to pick up any watch and wear it on a daily basis without much thought that it's polarizing, that there's an element that puts you off in a place or whatever else. Tom Wilson says you could do with having a secretary. Yeah, I sure could. If YouTube was paying me enough, for sure, I mean, I would be able to afford some staff. That'd be good. To shreds. No, flippin', I don't. I kind of overplayed it. I comment more on the business side of things. That the watch being released, this blue dial variant of the Black Bay, it's not a creative decision at all. It's a business decision, and it sucks. It really sucks. Dear Artifact, who's one of the most vehement haters of this new release, saying, "Tell me about it, my friend. They need to diversify away from the Black Bay." Completely agree. It's because of all the Pelagos hype. Yeah, I mean, you'll see in the video, I chat about a few details, but yeah, as far as it goes, my wife has the OP34, too small, Demetrius. Anyway, going to carry on through. Gorgeous selection of pieces, CD. Thank you for sending them in. And funnily enough, we get another submission from Cedar Canoe, which is another Smith's Everest. Pay me within watches and I'll be a secretary, kookaroo. No, the only great watch I have is the Seamaster. So sadly, it's not a very fascinating collection. But I love this. This photography is fantastic. So this was him with his Land Rover the other day. And on the leather strap looks phenomenal. And seeing it in context, this looks to be on top of one of the rims, or this could be on the bonnet of the car, I don't know. But Smith's Everest, ladies and gents, it's a gem. It's a great little piece. I've been enjoying the hell out of mine this week. Put it on a Jubilee, and it's all I wear. 36 mils. It's such, I really feel like it's such a contemporary size. And it's one that is going to last the test of time. I feel like the size might come back one day soon. The overblown, overbuilt watches, I think they will be reduced. As we can probably tell in this Perpetual Black Bay 58 Red, as we can probably tell, the demand in the market seems to be going towards the 38, 39 millimeter divers now. I don't know. Very difficult to tell. And founder time is capital. Thank you, as always. It's such a pleasure having you here, James. It's a pleasure having you back. I really hope you're looking after yourself and recovering well and dosing yourself up on all the meds. So he says, love being back, watching the stream with the ID tribe. Don't forget the super chats. No, I appreciate it, James. Thank you so much. Life is short, and these moments are special. Yeah, James being one of the people who can really attest to that for sure. Life is short. I mean, flash. Life is a flash. So yeah, it's, as always, I'm sure I say this often, but I cannot thank you all enough. It's a part when I can be a bit more sentimental. I cannot thank you all enough for sending these watches in to the show, being a part of the show, because you make this content so interesting. That's what I love. It's a time when I'm not creating anything at all. It's me just sitting back, taking a moment to share what everyone else is wearing. We get to see what happens behind the scenes, not what we're being marketed to, or, you know, as we go through, we're going to see some great sports-related pieces, but trust me, you're going to see some gorgeous pocket watches, and it's a flying saucer. It's all sorts of talk. 121 click bezel, thank you. Based in the US, the Barry White of horology. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I hope you're enjoying 4th of July. All of you in the States, I really hope you're having a great time. Knocking back a few beers, having some barbecues. We call it braais, coming from South Africa. Okay, so going to jump to the next piece. And this is from Chip Wong. Oh my. So this is one of the best pieces of the show, without a doubt. Chip Wong is usually in the chats, but he sent in an amazing piece. And it's one that really caught my attention because we will see a very similar model that comes in from Omega in a second. I think it's an Omega. Okay, so here we go. Are we ready? Vacheron Historique triple calendar, or they call it a calendrier, 1942, with this insane champagne dial. This is a beautiful, beautiful looking watch. Don't worry, we'll see the movement in a second as well. El Brisbane was perpetual. That's great. And it's a pleasure to see the canoe. It's nice seeing, you love sending in Seikos most of the time, so it's nice seeing a bit of variety as well. It's just great. I love these shows. I love the collections. Chip Gauge, wrong Chip. Oh, did I say Chip Wong? Chip Gauge, thank you. Sorry, what did I say? Chip Gauge, apologies. You're in the chat. Wrong Chip. And because Chip Wong is the gent who has all the Daytonas and a Lamborghini, I think. I remember that story. I love this piece. What about it works so well? And I was trying to think about it for a second, and it really is down to those numerals. The numerals and the way they have been done. The gauge is curled into the 2s, the 3s, you see the 4, the 5, the 8 and 9. Look how they've been done here. Open 9. This 8 has a rounded element to it. Everything about it. I mean, the way the date has been arranged with the arrow hand pointing to it. The lugs being, you know, teardrop, almost corne de vache styled. They've got this very, not a weighty presence behind them, but it just suits the watch case so well, I think, as a pairing. We chatted about this on the Philips auction together, but I love the champagne dial and the perpetual calendar and everything else. So again, this is called the Vacheron Historique Triple Calendrier 1942, and I said in brackets, champagne. Absolutely stunning. One of my favorites of the show, and what is hilarious is that in a second we're going to see from Clive, who we know as 9 Bolts in the chat. He sends in a watch that is virtually exactly the same. So we're going to enjoy it in a second. So let's see, Mark P, welcome to the show. Great having you here, sir. Apologies for joining in late. Don't worry about it, man. Really don't worry about it. I mean, I know you normally jump in and out. I hope you're having a great time Saturday evening in the UK. It's just absolutely amazing. You all being here. There's 260 of you watching currently, and I really hope you're enjoying this. It's going to get better. We're going to see even more variety. Is the calendar enamel? Lane is asking. Chip, if you're in the chat, please reply to that. It'll be good. Jean-Claude Beaver. Wow, it's a killer dial element. So well placed. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting watch. And remember, this is 40s, hey? 40s inspired. But we're going to carry on through to the movement, which has to be shown as well. Just a very typical, fully covered movement with all the elements. Sadly, it's out of focus because it's so polished, but you get to see it in its glory. We're going to see some amazing movement shots during the show as well. It's going to be good. It's going to be so good. But I must say, this is one of my favorites of the show. I think the colors are so complementary. The way the lugs work with the case and the dial itself, unique, extremely unique and special. Okay, going to move on through. Chip, thank you for sending this in. And to Chris, with a G-Shock, and his pup's name is Dolly. Now, I was trying to work out the breed, and I'm going to take a swing and guess it's a Pyrenean mountain dog. I might be completely wrong here, but I recognize the white and the brown eyes. I love my dogs, so this is a wild guess. I hope I didn't botch it, Chris. But rocking a G-Shock, we were talking about dogs on the show, and I'd love to be a part of it, but I don't have any dogs anymore, which is sad. But Thomas, thank you again for the super chat. So glad to have James here. It's such a pleasure. It really is. All of you watching. Dolly the dog. Call me Zeppi. Yeah, it's awesome. Really is. So Sydney saying Italian. Okay. So I hope I'm guessing right. English white golden retriever. It hasn't seen much sun in its life. I have a feeling it's a Pyrenean mountain dog, which looks pretty big. But forgive me, I'm not the best. I'm pretty good with dog breeds, but I can botch it too. Gorgeous G-Shock, if you can call it G-Shock gorgeous. Speaking of which, Tim Mosso just put a video up. His weekend watches dealing with a solid yellow gold version. It's like $70,000. I don't know what that's about, but it's all yellow gold apparently, and it was some anniversary model. I don't get it. But watch Watchbox's latest weekend watches show that he normally puts up, and you'll see it in all its glory. Gorgeous piece, gorgeous animal. I absolutely love dogs more than anything. And this is not the same Chris, if I'm not wrong, but he sends in quite a nice selection. So first off, we have the Great White that I hope I coined the name Great White Seamaster Professional. And all of you in the chat, let's see what's going on here. Ed talks, he says, I have a breed you may be familiar with. Boerboel, yeah, love Boerboels. They are amazing animals. They are the most, I mean, I tell you, the dogs that sound the scariest are the most friendly and lovable. You don't want to get on the wrong side of them, but they are incredible animals. I've had a great time with Boerboels in my past, and lots of Rhodesian Ridgebacks. South Africa, as you know, that breed, generally, you get a lot of those animals there. Okay, catching up with all of you in the chat again. If you can tag me, Mitch asking, how do you super chat? I don't even know. I think there's a button somewhere in the chat. I have no idea, but thank you, everyone. And Zane sending in, Demetrius sends in $5. Thank you so much, Demetrius. We're getting to your piece very soon. Okay, I've got to get back onto, I can slobber as good as a dog. So getting back in, Seamaster Professional 300, this being the polar white variant. I like to call the Great White. On a rubber strap, I think this combination is phenomenal. But he also sends in something that's pixelated in the background. If anyone knows industrial design, you might know what this chair is. And I'll give you a few seconds to guess what this might be. Someone's probably going to say IKEA and all the rest, but there's probably someone who knows a bit about design who could mention what this chair looks like. I'll give you Charles Eames. Yeah, got it. It's a lounge. I'll give you that. So this is called the Eames lounge chair. And amazingly, what Eames really pioneered was the idea of basically heating plywood and using water as the formation, what they call steam heating, basically, allowing you to actually bend it around the material. Now, this is most definitely not a 60s model. I don't believe this is an original. This is a recreation, but these are stupidly expensive for what they are. I'll say that much. If you can find an original 60s Eames lounge, you can probably buy a house with it. But nice seeing the pairing. Eames lounge chair. Nowadays, we see that IKEA and most knockoff brands replicate these, but this was the original. And it's incredible how, like bending guitar sides, as 121 click bezel says, yeah, for sure. And seeing these two together, I think this pairing is pretty amazing. So heat treating plywood to form the sides was something that wasn't done in the furniture industry back then. And it's incredible how these designs have lasted so long. Eames, the two Eames, husband and wife, Charles and Ray Eames, they made the most amazing chairs. I've done so much studying of them over time. Industrial design BS, but yeah, a little bit of background there. Love this combination. I think this watch on the rubber straps sells it. It really is a gorgeous piece. And they are such workhorses too. Let's not forget that as well. So Chris, thanks for sending this in. Next, we're jumping to Claudio. And he sends in a really peculiar watch that I think Eric Bell is going to love in the chat. And I'm going to try and get this right. The reference for this is called, it's a Citizen Aqualand C0022. So let's just get to the chat and catch up with all you here. On saying iconic design. Well, I didn't know that. Now, Matthew, great having you here, by the way, from New Zealand. It's like 3 in the morning there for you. Thank you for joining all of us. Look it up. Look up Charles and Ray Eames, E-A-M-E-S. And the stuff they made back in the day, I tell you what, with regards to just the way they formed their chairs, they did everything, not just chairs. They did so many interior pieces. And Lane Edwards saying, I had a 70s Eames chair that I found at an antique shop, bought it for 75 and sold it for a lot more, 10 years in German. And that's it. I mean, they weren't necessarily collectible. But now all of a sudden, I tell you, the industries are all the same. Very similar to watches, to guitars, actually. Furniture from that era, 60s era. If you can find anything from that time and sell it, you will make a killing because they're in such high demand. So this piece, let's try and address this model. What did he say? He gave me a full description, and this piece basically does everything. So it's a dive timer. What else? It's anti-digi, as someone has mentioned in the chat. It has a depth gauge. So this gadget on the side here, I can imagine is a depth gauge element. It has an inbuilt alarm. It has a rotating bezel, 200 meters waterproof. It has so many more other functions to it. It's got a perpetual, it's got a date and all the rest to it as well. But I remember Claudio saying that it's one of the watches that cannot be beaten. And with regards to function, I think it's quite something. I would imagine it's a 70s era watch. Don't know. Anyway, catching up with all of you in the chat. It needs 3 batteries, Eric Bell says. Wow, that's something. I mean, Eric Bell knows his dive watches. He knows so much. So please, if anyone wants to direct a question to him, and Eric Bell is someone who does take his watches into the ocean and dives really deep with them too. So it's great. And Tom Austin saying it's 3 a.m. You're based in Japan, aren't you, Tom? I feel like I remember you saying you're based in Japan. Correct me if I'm wrong. And Tom, I hope you enjoyed your initial welcoming with your cover photo piece. So congratulations with your gorgeous your SeaQ that you picked up. Okay, moving on. Claudio, thank you for sending this in. We're jumping to our man, Clint. Now, Clint is a fellow South African expat. I featured him a few times on the show before. I'm trying to remember the watches he sent in. One he sent in was a Explorer 5-digit, Polar 5-digit reference. And now he sends in the 2254, one of my favorite Seamasters in the line. This being a great tribute watch to the MOD Seamasters of the 60s. And yeah, great example, great piece. Also very versatile for what it is. You're in Hong Kong. Okay, thank you for that, Tom. It's great to know. Yeah, so just another example. If I was in contact with Omega's CEO, we'd be sitting down and chatting about recreating a piece like this without the valve on the side here, don't worry, but making a great tribute or a recreation of those MOD models in a different way, different modern approach, but everything about it. The dial is symmetrical. The dial is symmetrical. We've got a wave pattern to it. The way the batons work at the quarters, where you actually see a date complication that's there, but you also have loom on the side. Small little touches that make it versatile. Sword hands. Great relationship between the elements on the dial. You can see the minute marks very easily. There's so many little aspects. Overall, great looking watch. It's a real contemporary model. And you can find these on eBay for great prices as well. I mean, they're not expensive in the slightest, which is fantastic. Dropped my 2254 today, 30 centimeters bend. Oof, it's okay. They can take a hit. Okay, there's so many comments going on, and I'm missing all of you. Again, if you'd like to get my attention, tag me in the chat, and I'll see it a lot easier. Ms. Perpetual says I have a 2232. That's the original, right? That's a proper MOD variant. I've handled one as well in the professional case, 42 mil. It's amazing. It is such a nice piece. The owner did something peculiar. We got like red nail polish, and he put it on all the tips of the hands, which was strange. But it's an amazing watch. Really is nice. Okay, going to carry on. And Madab says, do you prefer sword or skeleton hands on your Amigas? I mean, this to me is the way. Sword hands, skeleton hands, not so much. I think they're a bit too divisive, a bit too polarizing. Solid hands for me. I mean, I wear a broad arrow Amiga, so you can imagine I'm someone who kind of enjoys the more loom, the better, I say. It'd be nice if they made skeleton hands a little bit more loomed. That's what I believe. Okay, moving on. Thank you for this, Clint. Now, we just looked at, let me try and refresh your memory for anyone who has just joined. Chip sent in an absolutely beautiful Vacheron. Okay, now you might be thinking you're going to be seeing deja vu in a second, but next up we have 9 Bolts, who sends in an Amiga Cosmic Jumbo from the 50s. Watch this. This is a recreation of a 1942 piece. This is an original piece from the 1950s. And you see how they share kind of a similar relationship here and there. I thought that was quite a nice a blend of elements. So Clive, this was great to see. Again, it's a Cosmic Jumbo from the 1950s, sharing the same elements. You can see the way the dial has been done with all those numerals. Reminds you of, I mean, look at that. How is that? Open 9s, rounded 8, just the same. I don't know if the last had a serif on the 7, but everything. The 2s on so curled over, but it's so hilarious how these elements are really shared between the 40s and the 50s variants of the time. Yeah, I love it. This show, variety. I think Clive might have mentioned that he wanted to share some variety on the show, and this really does it. I really enjoy the elements around it. Choice of color for the dial track is so good. Blue, it works so well. And that's such a good point, Dear Artifact. He always brings up poignant points, that Dear Artifact of ours. Blue, and how it contrasts then with the blue hand. I shouldn't say contrast, how there's a relationship, a much clearer relationship. You can see how there is a good way of dividing your eye between the numerals on the dial, the numerals around the date, the moon phase. Look how it's tropicalized over time. It's just fantastic. And one element that I just love looking at are the Amiga logos, how they've changed over time. This looks so much like mine, actually. It's pretty amazing. We should actually go up to mine, but I won't. I'll refrain. Got to keep the show rolling. We're only on C. We've been running the show for 75 minutes almost. Ninebolt saying, thanks for showing the watch. 1950 Amiga Cosmic Jumbo DW2486-2. Holy smokes. Even back then, they were all over the show with their references. Portuguese calendar. It's fantastic. Supplied to Venezuela. No idea how it got there. It's amazing. It really is nice. It's such a unique piece. I don't know if you said it was 18 karat, but it sure looks pretty gold. Show us the VC again, Demetrius says. Yeah, for sure. It is by far one of the best pieces of the show. I think the champagne, the way the numerals work on the dial. Remember, this is a 1942 recreation. I would imagine they've upped the scale and the size of the watch altogether, but the elements work the same. Even though this is more classical, over a period of like 8 years, you get to see the differences here and there. And I'm going to catch up with you in the chat. I'm sorry that I'm missing everything. And we're going to jump straight to another piece, and this is from our watch wrangler, Clive Watch Wrangler, who might be in the chat. I saw him earlier. He sent in 2 amazing watches, and this was during the Philips show. 121 click bezel says Amiga still uses blue hands, accents, and they're gorgeous. I agree. Heat blued hands, such a great bragging right. Tom Austin, thank you for the honor of the cover photo. Yeah, it's a pleasure, Tom Austin. Your photos were beautiful. And yes, the GO CEO invited me to be a guest in Glashutte. Grab it with both hands, sir. Go and enjoy it. Glashutte Original is one of those brands, undercover, I believe similar to Vacheron in the same scheme. Undercover, underrated brand that I think is going to continually grow and build over time. Dear Artifact has an eye for detail, Megan says. He really does. He really does. He's handled so many watches over his time, I'm sure. Triforce Rich saying, I'm working on Chip Wong. He's considering selling all his white gold rainbow Daytona and getting a Patek Celestial. I don't know. It's all up to him. I mean, I'm definitely not the person to refer to. You can ask Russell, who's normally in our chat. VC does the date track in red chip gauge. Oh, it's amazing. Really is nice. Okay, I've got to carry on through here. We need to start a betting on the run times, flip and zipper. Oh, that'd be good. Going to add to the pool. I think it's going to be a 3-hour show for sure. Let's get to the next piece because it is spectacular. And if you know the background story behind this watch, it's so scummy and terrible, but what Clive did to get this is amazing. Okay, let me just get finished through the chat here. Chi-Town joining us. Pleasure having you here, sir. Happy 4th of July. And right, birth year Speedmaster from the Watch Wrangler, being a reference 105.1012. And it's just after the Ed White, if I'm not wrong. This is the model that first got the professional styled hands. The first watch that got the professional style case, and it's a 321. Everything that you'd like out of a Speedmaster, this is the dead man's watch, as Hans says. So the story goes is that, if I remember this right, I'm sure if Clive is in the chat, the patina is delicious. It is phenomenal. This is how you do patina well. Another reason why this is a unique Speedmaster, you notice how the minute track and the internal dial, I'm trying to learn about Speedmasters. You see how the minute track and the internal dial is stepped. That's another element that tells you it's a vintage piece. The vintage logo as well applied. So yeah, the patina is phenomenal. This hasn't been touched. This is an untouched condition. As you can probably tell, the hand has degraded a bit. But the story goes, if I remember, that he basically bought this watch for about $5,000 off an old lady on Craigslist. I think she was clearing out her husband's stash, who just passed away. And he stole this watch, quite literally stole this watch. And such a fantastic example. It's amazing. It really is amazing. This is one of the worst and best steals that any one of us in this community could get our hands on. I love the fact that it's just untouched, as our Jean-Claude Beaver would say. I don't know if he is in the chat. I saw him earlier. Dot above 90, 321 patina, beautiful. Yeah, it is. He ripped off an old lady. He did, Jimmy. The thing is, though, I mean, if no one values a watch, then you can be a bit more negligible with price, I believe. I mean, really, at the end of the day, it's a buyer's market, and if you can get it for a bargain, I mean, go for it. That's what I say. If you are ill-informed about something, I mean, at the same time, though, she's an old lady, so it's disgusting, but still, it's hilarious. So Triforce Rich asking me, your thoughts on practical functionality, necessity, and engineering for engineering's sake. For example, Sea Dweller designed to meet an actual need, but deep sea engineered for engineering's sake. Very good point, Triforce. There is definitely a time when it just gets ridiculous. And the deep sea, I don't know if I mentioned it in the video back then. I might as well jump to the next piece from Clive, which is kind of linked to the same family. Thank you for sending this in, Clive. Beautiful, untouched gem. Next, he sends in a vintage GMT, and this also nipple dial, all original, clean and clear. Along with the homage pieces and everything else that Clive collects, he has some stellar examples. This ain't communism, NATO says. Agree. So talking about over-engineering for engineering's sake, I think there's a fine line with a lot of watches. I mean, talking about stylistically, when I think of the super case on watches like the Submariners and everything else, it's over-engineering for the sake of just making it look like it has more visual presence. This piece in 40 millimeters looks superb. And I find it hilarious that Rolex is now going back on themselves and tapering in the cases ever so slightly with their new models. I just don't understand. So talking about the Sea Dweller as an example of a watch that goes down to like, what, 3 kilometers, where humans generally, I mean, people who actually work at depth when it comes to welding, they only travel from between 120 to a maximum of about 250 meters in the ocean. Anything above and beyond that is so non-practical. And I fully agree that there is a fine line that you need to ride. 300 meters of water resistance is nothing. 200 meters, 100 meters is nothing to scoff at. I mean, just travel down 25 meters in the ocean and tell me that's not deep enough. You know what I mean? Okay. Catching up with all of you in the chat, I think Megan mentioned deceased estates are the best. Let's be honest. Yeah, they are the best. When you have the cash in your hand and you have an old box, an old watch, yeah, I agree. I can say I've never been someone to experience it, but I mean, when you're dealing with someone who doesn't understand the value, you can really make a steal at the end of the day. It's not the most politically correct thing, but this isn't a communist state, so I guess, or not communist world altogether. Truth is, great having you here, sir. All of you in the chat. So yeah, gorgeous GMT. Another example, nipple dial. Everything is clean and clear. Bracelets, all original. Look at, if I pull into the dial, we have a good look at the detailing here. Untouched. Look at that. Vintage R. This is how you can differentiate models from the 70s era. I think I remember hearing that you look at how it's sort of related to a dog, and how the legs can look like a Dachshund or a Doberman almost. The extended leg means something, and this must mean it's like an 80s or like late 70s era piece. I don't know. You might need to clarify. But everything, open nines, all of those details. Great question, Triforce Rich, about the over-engineering. I'd love to think about it more. Could actually base a live show around it. That would be a lot of fun. Okay, going to carry on through. Great looking piece from Clive. Thank you for sending these 2 watches in, if you're around. And next we're jumping to Curtis. Our man Curtis, who travels all over the world. He is a commercial pilot based in San Diego, California. And he is someone who we have featured on the show a lot. We feature him basically every week. And Mason's saying nipple dial. Yes, the vintage GMT is most definitely a nipple dial. Looks gorgeous. So Curtis being based in San Diego, he travels everywhere. His first real Rolex was a 16700. I'm so useless. A 16750, I think it was. Just a standard Pepsi GMT. And as a transitional watch that he bought for himself at I think when he hit his 40th or his 50th, he picked up a Sky Dweller. And he uses this as a pilot, and he loves it, which I think is pretty incredible. Showcase watches, good night. Great having you here. I know you're based in the UK, so yeah, it's getting pretty late here. Ben, thank you so much for the super chat. Please all stay healthy and enjoy your watches. It's a very important aspect to follow. Yeah, so I'm going to carry on through. NATO saying I need Mark Goldberg to clarify. Talking about nipple dials, I'm guessing. So the Sky Dweller, this being a 2-tone variant with a black dial. I don't have the reference on hand, but it's, me in references, it's like a 11625323, something like that. But overall, you get the elegance of dress along with the functionality of a GMT. And in a video I made, 8 months ago, I discuss the Sky Dweller and talk about it to be a watch that was really inspired by 50s aviation pieces. The thinking was back in the day, how would Rolex as a brand address the aviation watch when it first came out as a GMT? And, this is pretty much the approach that I would have expected from the 50s. Fluted bezel, just everything. It's a fascinating piece. One of the best complications they make as well, primarily because you can adjust everything from the crown. No pushes on the case, nothing. You can adjust the full calendar as well as the GMT complication. Great piece. Curtis is pretty balling when it comes to dealing with watches in general. He has a great selection, and always a pleasure sharing Curtis's watches. Hans saying not a fan. It is divisive. I mean, it's more like a dress model in the family than a sports watch, but it has these elements. It's kind of like how AP addressed the code 1159, but I think this was done a little bit better because it definitely keeps Rolex's DNA in the mix. Rolex has halted production, truth be told. I believe so. For the last 2-3 months, they have stopped completely. Okay, going to carry on through here. So thank you for this, Curtis. We're jumping to Demetrius next, who sends in, would you believe, another Smith's Everest. This is the third and final, I think, I hope, but on a shark mesh bracelet. And the way the shark mesh has been done here, this is how you should do a shark mesh always. The way how it bends around the spring bar itself, much cleaner look, and just looks so aggressive. A 36mm Smith's Everest on a shark mesh. You've seen it here first. This Perpetual says, my first was a 30 dial Submariner, but sold it in 2009. And what's the demand like for those? I'd like to know, Mr. Perpetual. They are really sought after now, right? They are interesting, very interesting pieces. Taking another hit of the wine, and I'll jump back and say hi. A very Bond shot, John Boy says. Johnny Boy. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's really classic. I really enjoy the pool as well. Nice texture there. I'm sure Demetrius is still in the chat. He was here a second ago. Yeah, amazing. Great looking piece. We've looked at these so many times now. It's getting kind of boring, which is sad. Good thing I didn't feature mine. Hans saying run out of wine. No, I'm doing pretty good. I've got quite a lot to go. Okay, next up. Trying to remember the selection here. So this is from Draper Zach. Draper Zach sends in a Grand Seiko SBGX 259. And on the topic of brandies next, I must say, Hans, I'm not a brandy person. I don't know about you. Ryan wine, you guys in the chat, it's great. South African wine, no Chi-Town today, it's Australian. I really enjoy my Australians. So this Grand Seiko SBGX, I don't know, is this a spring drive? I might be wrong there. I don't even know if it's quartz. He didn't give me any details about it, but I struggle so much with these references in general. But it really does represent the brand very much. And Russell's in the chat. Oof, Russell, you sent in some amazing pieces. Great to touch base on you over email over the last few days. Hope the weather has been better where you are compared to where I am. It's been a freaking miserable day here. But we look forward to seeing Russell's pieces at the end of the show because they are unique. We haven't seen them shared at all. And they really cap off the idea of sports watches, which is something we've seen followed through. So Shaitan saying, I've only tried Yellowtail. Wasn't fun. I prefer California Spanish. Yeah, Yellowtail is very average. One of my favorites, think of a good brand, Four Cousins was amazing that I used to have back in Cape Town. But geez, I've lost my wine background, really. I haven't had any high-quality wine since I've been here, honestly, in the UK. Great looking piece though, and we're going to see some incredible Grand Seikos courtesy of Megan and her sister Jacinta in a little while. One very collectible Grand Seiko. I've got to carry on rolling. Holy smokes, been doing this for an hour and a half already. Thank you for this, Draper Zach. Next in, we're moving to Dylan. And to commemorate 4th of July, he sends in 2 shots, one of his Longines. I feel like this is a Longines flagship model, but I always struggle. Notice how the numerals have been done here. Very similar to the Vacheron and the Amiga that we saw earlier. Nice looking piece, and I love the leather strap on it as well. So I'm going to hold on this for a second. I'm trying to see what else. 121 click bezel, that's Dylan, great. Longines L2.604.4.73.2. It's a nice mouthful there, really rolls off the tongue. Grand Seiko Polo's hot. Yeah, it's really nice. It's a nice looking piece. So overall, I mean, it has sword hands. It looks to be a model that was, I mean, I might be wrong here, but it looks like a Navy issued watch almost. Longines in general takes their history and heritage from pilot watches. I'd imagine this has a more RAF inspired background to it. You can find every little piece of history behind Longines watches, or Longines, however you want to say it. Nice looking watch though. And moving next, he sent in a few more. What did he send? He sent a whole selection of stuff. He sent in a series of loom shots, which I thought was great. It's always a pleasure seeing a few loom shots on the show. And here we see from left to right, we have an Air King, we have a Seamaster, we have an IWC chronograph. I botched that name. And a SeaQ that looks to be modded in a few places with a fully loomed bezel. I love the loomed minute track. That is exciting. But overall, you get to see the difference between blue loom and your standard Sooth Blue Luminova. As a pairing, I can honestly say I have never seen the Air King loomed before. Talk about sparing loom. What's the ideal there? I have never seen such a bare looking Rolex before in my life. No? Someone please clarify if there's anything else in the sports range. That's amazing. I would expect to have little plots around the dial or something, but just at the 12. Unique. Great looking loom shots though. I love the combination of blue and green. And he also sends in a few more. This is his Air King, which we can focus on in a second. Stunning shot. Again, American flag, 4th of July. But this model, I mean, the Air King is a watch that deserves so much more praise because of its background and being a watch actually given to RAF pilots in the 50s and where it all originated. The Air King needs more loom. Jamie, I agree. This piece, I mean, there's been debates about it, but this watch really feels like one that was assembled almost from a parts bin because of all the elements. You know, I don't think it had are these the T-Rex hands? I don't know. But, you know, it has the white gold numerals at the quarters, a very Flieger-inspired dial, but it needs a 0 at the 5. Oh, I tell you what. Great looking watch, though. I think one element that really saves it that I enjoy, the use of green and yellow on the dial itself, it feels more like a Rolex. You know, the yellow coronet, the green of Rolex as a brand. Never seen Air King loom. It's great. Really is nice to see it in a different light. I did that mod with help from LCBI, Bezel and Chapter Ring. Thanks for that, 121. And all the 5s. and Javier is saying, by the way, I'm Ben, the owner of those Amigas. Oh, fantastic. Sorry, Javier, botched your name there. Thanks for your comments. Got to go to bed. Which one was my favorite of those Amigas? I love that Marine of yours. I hope I'm getting it right, that it is an Omega Marine from 1932. But I also really enjoy the gold variant of the Constellation. Oh, they're stunning. They all have their own little quirks that I really enjoy about them. Okay, going to carry on through here. Thank you for all of these, Dylan. Next, we're jumping to Edmund, and he sends in a Raymond Weil. I do not know the brand too well, but I've heard talk about them before in the past. And it has an open work balance, which is quite nice. He did give me a story about this watch. This might have been the first watch he ever got for himself, but I do enjoy when a brand can actually be bold enough to incorporate an open balance on the dial. So this is a good example. Going to hit the wine again. Radio silence is the worst. Ooh, next are asking Explorer 1 or Milgauss Z Blue. Difficult. I'm actually, depending on the Explorer 1 you're asking, I would take the Z Blue Milgauss over the modern Explorer 1. That's just my taste. If I was going for an Explorer, I would bite the bullet and jump on a 1016 if possible. I just find the modern Explorers a little bit too timeline heavy. And I see Russell and Zane talking about Patex and what's being picked up. Triforce Rich saying the Air King is a mess. It has a 39mm Explorer dial, Milgauss case. Oh, is that so? That's something I forgot to mention. The Milgauss case, so it's a 40mm case. It's fascinating. Okay. I'm a PCL hater. Polished center links, yeah, another element that's not up everyone's alley for sure. I do enjoy the contrast here, the white dial with the use of gold. I don't know if it's plated or not, but again, I do enjoy the idea of an open balance. We've seen a few examples like Zenith open work in general. So thank you for sending this in, Edmund. I've got to motor through. We are really, I mean, we've got like, what, an hour and a half left, and we've still got a huge selection to go. Eric Bell, our man, sending in an Aragon Here we go, 50mm Turbine bezel. And for the sake of time, I had to cut out a lot of the pieces that were sent in, or should I say extra reference images, because it got a bit heavy. I can honestly say there were so many submissions, I got a bit confused. And Javier saying, thanks, man. Let me know if you want to see more of the Marine, perhaps another collection of mine. Oh, geez, for sure. I would say not too many next time, maybe like 3 from your set. But I tell you, it was such a pleasure being able to look at them all in one place. And I think many of us appreciated it. I love the Constellation line. I've tried my best to study them, and yeah, as it goes. So Aragon as a brand has a Japanese movement. I don't know, maybe it has a SeaQ movement inside it. Dive Master, 200-meter water resistance, but again, 50mm in size. That is insane. Fully loomed, as you can imagine. And the one element that's really good is the way the bezel has been done, but we can't see it here. Maybe I botched it. I think he sent in another watch that I probably saved and didn't nail it there. But anyway, Eric, as always, you're in the chat somewhere. Thank you for sending this in. Then we're jumping to a fellow friend of the channel, Fahim, who is known on Instagram as King Flume. For all of you who are on Instagram, let me try and put him in the tag here, King Flume. If you're on Instagram, follow him because he takes the most amazing shots. He has a great collection. As we will get through and have a look. So Russell and Zayn are having a debate about 5520s and Russell's new Patek that he just picked up. So this shot that Fahim took, he called it something like a grip shot, and this seemed to be quite popular on the platform. People were starting to pick up on the idea, but it's a Batman, Batgirl, however you want to talk about it. And Barry Pell saying a dainty little summer watch addressing the dive master. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. So getting to this piece, I really enjoy the Batman. Batman on the Jubilee is something that I would definitely jump on if I had the opportunity, because it's such a versatile use of colors. The Leonardo DiCaprio wrist shot, not on the wrist. And that's from Dear Artifact. And all in all, one thing about Fahim, the way he manages to hit certain elements is mentioned about the color of the bezel. He managed to really get the blue in the light and how it works with the anti-reflective of the Cyclops. But moving through, he's got one of his pride and joy watches in the collection. He has a gorgeous resonance that he's educated me about. Jean and their resonance line. It's one of the most amazing Enigma shots from years gone. Enigma elements from years gone by that Jean was able to address with the way that these two movements individually managed to, through resonance, keep themselves synchronized. And I don't know if he's in the chat. I feel like I saw him earlier, but we were chatting on WhatsApp. There he is. Great to have you here, Fahim, as always. Amazing piece. I think this Jean is most definitely the cornerstone watch. Would you believe he was bathing his son with this watch this evening? So this is basically his diver at this point. It's fun. It's just great. I find it quite impressive when someone can wear a platinum resonance, twin movement model, and at the same time use it for all occasions. Yeah, Thomas Burnett, Fahim is a legend. And Tom Austin using an owl as the example. I'm pretty sure they could call this watch the owl. It does have that kind of placement, the way the eyes work. It's quite creepy. Honestly say, it's like it's staring at you, Great piece though. Really enjoy it. As everything, the balance, the placement, classical motifs, but with a modern inspiration behind it, Okay, going to carry on through the next watch that he sends in. Because he has a Jean, he can get whatever he wants. And next is a Unimatic SpongeBob. I don't know anything about Unimatic as a brand, but I find them quite unique. He has a NASA version as well. But I enjoy the dial. I think that's very nice. And the yellow highlights. It's just a lot of fun, as it is. Missing strap, as Flippin says. I think he just had it wrapped around his hand there. I'm taking the first fisherman's friend for the show because we're about to go horse here. But nice. Is that SpongeBob? Yeah, as Dino says, it is. If I pull in further, you can see he's in a very happy mood. This is basically 2020 face right here. You can see that expression sums up this year for most of us, right? That's great. What I also love is the way that Fahim actually color codes everything. He's someone who really enjoys color, as we will see now. Batman with the blue. You have the Jean with this almost like iridescent also blue, anodized effect to it. SpongeBob with his all yellow. And then one of his favorites, one of my favorite Speedmasters, the Tintin, all red. A red and white contrast. This was the cover photo, darling, for the Speedmaster video that came out this week. And yeah, I think it's one of the most interesting because the way they've addressed it, it's vibrant, but it's also very restrained. And those colors just work so nicely together as a pairing. And also with a red strap, anything red that accentuates it. Does this racing dial work well as something more readable? Maybe, possibly. But really, it's a professional with a small X factor that only the enthusiast would notice. Megan's saying, second fisherman's friend, cherry, flavor right. Yeah, it is great. It's my favorite. I haven't tried many others, but blackberry, blackcurrant kind of sucks. Cherry is just, you can never go wrong with cherry flavored anything, right? So yeah, Fahim, as always, you sent these in the other week. I didn't feature them. You needed them featured. And looks like a toy. I like the original. Yeah, the original is also nice. Fisherman's friend. That Amiga catalog you did. I have all my friends watching now. Wow, Dino, really? That really means a lot. I wanted to address the modern variants and how, what stands out? What is the best in the line? I probably didn't do such a good job because there are like 50 more that could have been spoken about. But I kept it in the ballpark of about 20, 21. Maybe I'll feature it in the corner of the screen now if I remember. But it was a lot of fun. Just vibrance and variety. And I use this as a diatribe. Is that the right word? I use it as a comparison when looking at what Tudor is now doing with their blue ball Black Bay. And where Omega, yes, people complain so much about the limited editions and everything else. Wristwatch Experience, great having you here. People complain about Omega with their limited editions and their anniversary models, but at least Omega takes it another step. Dark Side of the Moon, Tintins, CK2998s. They bring out a whole variance of pieces that each one of us can enjoy for a different reason and maybe be interested in one day. Where Tudor with their GMT, the Black Bay Black, Black Bay Blue, Black Bay 41s, Black Bay Bronze, etc., etc. It gets, come on. You know what I mean? But it is a nice looking watch. No, I fully agree. I do criticize the business practice behind it, though. I don't criticize the watch itself. I mean, I would pick up the watch because I love the blue. They've really managed to nail the blue so well with it. But in general, they could have done better. They could have just opened up a new chapter. 2020, I do say in the video, 2020 is a rounded number. Could have made a stunning impact with the watch they brought out. Fahim, Megan, holler on Instagram. I'm sure IDguy will do. Yeah, for sure. If anything on Instagram, I'll try my best. Rather comment, because that's generally how I get my notifications. DMs, I suck on Instagram. Don't even try DMing me on Instagram. I've got like 50 of them. I've never touched them. Next, so thank you, Fahim, as always, sending these pieces in. Next is from Felis. I hope I get your name right. Tag Monaco Golf Edition. This looks like he's sitting in an airport, but I might be wrong. But Tag Monaco, that line, this isn't the caliber 11 with the crown on the other way. But it seems like Tags also enjoys, similar to the Speedmaster that we just saw, they also enjoy the idea of mixing and matching, golf being one. I think they also have a Martini Racing variant. Of course, they have the Steve McQueen model that's all blue, and so on and so forth. Tag, Hoya, whatever you want to call the brand. Lots of background. Dino saying, I think they're trying to add colorways, not much more than just a business move. Yeah, that's it. It's purely business. There's no creative elements to it at all. I say all sorts of things. I say it's boring. I say they move at a snail's pace. It's a great video. It's coming out on Tuesday. So I don't know how I'm going to title it, but it's going to be something like, Should You Believe in the Hype? Or whatever else. Okay, moving on. Thank you so much for this. Felis. Hope I get your name right in one of those. Okay, next we're moving to, I called this the founder section because this comes from James, this comes from Megan and Jacinta. Megan, who's in the chat. And Jacinta sent me an email with a whole selection of pieces to look at. And I had to cull a few off because there were many that came in. But the variety is impeccable. Again, talking about the AP shortage that we were dealing with the other week, here's a selection of offshores, courtesy of James. This is his hand. And we get to see a selection of watches that all fall in line with the same category. I feel like they're in the same chapter. Flip and Zipper saying this is good. This is going to be really good. Really, really good. So, dear Artifact, let me address your comment. You say the Blue Bay, I love it. The Blue Bay is a nice watch, but Tudor doesn't deserve praise for it. It's just a color change. You know, that's it. I mean, there's one thing I did say. I did a redesign, and I did incorporate the snowflake dial around it and said, you know, the Tudor Black Bay Black is a great watch because it very much sums up what the Big Crown 623, whatever the hell, the Big Crown Submariner, the James Bond variant. But what this model needed to do was to incorporate a snowflake dial to be head and shoulders above the other one, or at least be side to side on par. I feel that the Blue Bay is a stripped down model compared to the Black Bay Black. That's just me. We'll talk about it with the gold accents and everything. When the video comes out, I address all of that. Eric Bell saying, and the winner is. Okay, so rating these watches, as we will see in a second, virtually impossible because the variety is intense, just in this category here. So we have all of these offshores, these being the modern variants. You've got a gorgeous gold finish. You've got steel. This looks like a PVD. Let's say the colors are pretty striking. And with regards to legibility, I think the winner goes to the gold and the black accents. So here's one selection. And of course, James is wearing one as well. So, I mean, he has quite a selection of APs in his collection. But now we're getting a little bit more varied. This is from Megan. This is Megan's wrist, if I remember right. Breguet Classique. And we just jump from serious sports to serious dress. AP Nanza, Saint says, great. Great set of APs. So this is an example. What I love so much about this photo is we can appreciate the texture with regards to the way that the coin edging has been done. The guilloche on the dial. Look at it. Breguet, above and beyond. Breguet will be mentioned on Thursdays, or in Thursday's video, talking about the history and development. So I don't know the reference to this model at all. Is that it? The 2640? I just call it the Classique because it's going to get intense as we go through. So Megan, thank you for this shot, but we're not done, ladies and gentlemen. Next, we jump to a De Bethune. And De Bethune as a brand, actually, as of right now, I want to mark it down, 7147. Thank you for that, Thomas. You know your references, sir. So De Bethune as a brand, another example of a really interesting in-house manufacturer. The way you can tell is the way that the lugs have been done, articulating elements. This all being anodized blue, or is it heat-treated blue? I really don't know. It's going to get worse. Trust me, the watches that we're going to see in a second, it gets intense. I feel like all of these elements here, these screws, I mean, these look like actual diamond inserts, cosmic related. I struggle with all of these. Is this to do with a space watch? You know, the 7147, that's to do with the Men in Black special, Matthew. I really don't know these references at all, so I'm not even going to try. Just look in the chat if you'd like to know more details. But overall, I want to talk about De Bethune, what am I saying? Because of the way they've attacked the whole modern approach to where they do the lugs and the case and the styling. Extremely unique to this brand and family. Next up, this is one of James's favorite brands, Girard-Perregaux. This being also Megan's wrist. This being a sapphire variant, sapphire case. And there is something I love about sapphire watches. As most of us know, it's all done, you know, in a lab. But along with ceramic, as you approach a case and that styling, sapphire as a case is another one of those just scientific masterclasses. And the one thing that I love about this piece is the way that everything is so horizontally opposed. You've got the bridges that run completely in line with each other. You've got the main barrel. It probably has twin barrels, I don't know. You've got your escapement at the base. This is a full tourbillon. You can see everything in skeletonized form. Can't say it's the easiest watch to read the time, but as far as sapphire watches go, it's pretty impeccable. Girard-Perregaux, one of James's favorites pieces, and Chaitan saying GP is highly underappreciated. It really is. And there were lots more that were sent in, which I didn't save because there were just too many. As it is, as you can probably see on the left-hand side, the show is so full. I've had to cull a few that came in, but trust me, there were like three. There were 3 or 4 different GPs that came in. Next up, one of my favorites in the selection. Don't drop it, as Radio Rest Deutschland says. Next up, Grand Seiko. Oof. This is basically the king of all Grand Seiko spring drives at this point in time. I do know the reference. It's the SBG-Z001, and it has one of the best movements from the line. It was a anniversary piece, if I'm not wrong, and everything about it. I mean, the finishing. This is also Megan's wrist again. They sent in some gorgeous pieces this week. I cannot thank you enough, Megan and Jacinta, for sending these in to us. I don't know how they finish these cases, if it's tempered. You would imagine it looks like it's been engraved by hand. You know, how they do silver work. It's platinum. I think it's platinum. I really don't know. But the snowflake case, they do call it. Tom Austin says, yeah, hammered platinum. Thank you, Thomas. Thomas is a dictionary. So good. I think they only made 100 of these pieces. They're stupidly rare. But with regards to the movement, it's top of the line, and it was an anniversary model that was introduced. It really is snowflake all the way. I mean, the texture on the dial, the way it transitions to the case. Honestly, it's a little bit overdone. It's a little bit overbearing, but you don't see this kind of finishing every day, which I think is what makes this watch such a unique model. Handmade platinum, as Megan says. And it does, you know, capture the artisanal styling of what makes Japanese. I mean, look at this. I love this. I'm just referring to my small screen there on my laptop. The way this is done, it almost reminds you of Damascus steel. It's beautiful. I don't know how they get this alloy right, but it is pretty phenomenal. Eric Bell saying, next video, Megan and family watches 5 hours. It'll take 5 days, Eric Bell, to cover all of these pieces, I tell you. Now, the next watch is a Hublot, would you believe? And I have no idea what this watch is. I said Hublot bronze, question mark. Is it bronze? I guessed it was, but I mean, the way this has all been engraved, this is Jean-Claude Beaver's darling, as most of us know. But we look at all the skulls and crossbones, I don't know, Aztec inspired. If someone could please clarify the detailing in the background. I don't know if Megan knows the reference to this model. I called it the Hublot bronze, question mark. Yikes, as Joe says. It's definitely not for everyone. But the styling reminds me of Aztec motifs. But again, I could be wrong there. It looks more maybe Native American motifs, actually. But everything from the bezel, I don't know if it's hand engraved or machine made. Memento Mori skulls show how precious time is. Milgas, yeah, I really don't know. Lightning bolt hand, I mean, that could be it, yeah, for sure. The radiation, I do enjoy that effect on the dial. But what a unique and peculiar piece. Unbelievable. Oh, one of the best comments of the show, Jean-Claude Beaver says, from my acid period, fantastic. Yeah, it clearly looks like you were inspired by something. You had a bad trip one of those days. That's the best comment of the show. Thank you for that, Jean-Claude. So thank you for this, Megan. Next, we're moving to one of their favorites in the family, Moser Fume dial, and one of the best. This is also Megan's wrist. You get to appreciate that emerald green. I could look at Fume dials from Moser all day, every day, and everything. The way the case has been done, very organic styling there. Oops! Oh no, I just dropped the ball. The fact that it doesn't have any numerals on the dial is also great. It's clean. It's simple. Also enjoy this background. This was quite unintentional, I'm sure, but we get a good use of that mint green in the combination too. It's just fantastic. The variety is top notch. This is the best variety I've ever seen from the founder family. I'll call you from now on. Andino saying H. Moser, underrated dial makers, yeah, for sure. Manned missions to Neptune. But then the next model. Now this one we have never really seen in the flesh, owned by anyone, and this is the Streamliner. I did a write-up on this watch. I really enjoyed looking at it because I think it's one of the most interesting sports chronographs from the family that we have seen in recent years. Not just the Moser family, but just in general. Everything about it I find fascinating. You know, the bullhead elements, the racing dial, the way the hands have been arranged, these cricket bat styled hands. The fact that it doesn't have subdials, it's so peculiar. Is it stainless steel or was it titanium? I can't remember. But everything, you know, it has this very, what do we call it? I'm missing out on the word, lobster tail style bracelet that flows through the case. I loved doing a write-up on this watch. Because it's not a popular brand by any means, and it's not a popular watch, it didn't get much attention or traction back then. But just everything, the script, look at that script. Please, can brands be more open with the way they use script on their dials? Gorgeous finishing there. And then I just love the fact that since there are no sub-dials, you use the hands themselves to count the 60-minute timer, and everything resets to 0. It's clean, simple, gorgeous. One of my favorite sports chronographs. Ebel style strap, Julian says, yeah, I agree. I really agree. It does have that same 70s inspired element. It's pretty amazing how they've grabbed into different realms of 70s motifs and utilize them, especially the idea of a bullhead chronograph, for example. An attempt to make a vintage classic, Joe. I think very much an homage to a vintage classic, but with a bit of modern touches. I compared this to the new Tesla Cybertruck, actually, in the way they've jumped on the bandwagon and tried to approach things. And then next, another crazy piece. This is the last from the family. I think Megan sent this to me on, I think she said it on like Monday or Tuesday, saying, I feel like an Uwerk today. Uwerk, I don't know how I'm going to say that properly. And she said, it's probably going to take me all day to work out how to read the time. I'm guessing the reference is UR100. But it's so basic the way the time telling works, which I really like. It looks so mechanical and crazy, but it's just simply, the hour is there and the minutes run across from right to left. And then as you hit the 60, so it'll flip around and you get the 7, which then sits at the top, so on and so forth. So this whole dial continually rotates. I don't know if it's PVD or if it's in carbon fiber or whatever else, but it's still great. Okay. I've got to catch up with a few of the chats going on. Dino saying, I wish Rolex would take a page and stop printing everything in English language on their dial. Yeah, as a full-on dictionary. Yeah, I agree. Some brands really can clean up the way they approach things. But I mean, it's all different. I don't know what the idea is behind, Rolex has this reputation of prestige, and they feel like it's important to, emphasize the elements, like it's a master chronometer and it's superlative chronometer. What am I saying? Oyster case and all of this. It's traditional in a way, but it also is overdone. Ben, great having you here, sir. Always a pleasure. Elon's watch, Jamie. Does Elon Musk wear one of these? I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it's kind of like, we're talking about the Streamliner. I don't know. Not a drinking watch. Is it a big piece? Russell asks. I don't know. I don't know what Megan's wrist size is, but it looks to be like a 44 mil. The lug width is quite extensive. But Uwerk as a brand, it's its own creature, very similar to how we've seen De Bethune approach their models, etc., etc. Unique, different, strange, but I love it. So really, the founder family. Megan, are you still in the chat? Thank you so much for sending it. And Chip Gage sent something great. Let me see if I can catch it. This review reminds me of when I watched Buddy Rich at concert as a teen. I couldn't decide whether to practice more or simply bum my drum set and quit. This review, we're talking about just in general. Geez, Chip, I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but me doing this, it's just the coffee and the alcohol, really. I don't remember what I say half the time. They don't have open case backs. Print on the back. Then that's an example. That's a good idea, Dean. Yeah, we can talk about Rolex in the way. Finally, we're going to be hitting Rolex right now. So thank you, Megan, James, Jacinta, everyone who's been helping, sending in these pieces. Absolute pleasure looking at all of them. Next, we're jumping to Frank. Holy smokes. It's coming up to the 2-hour mark, and we've just hit F. This is a problem. I'm going to have to fly through some of these pieces now. See what happens is I get very relaxed. And what happens is then everything slows down. It's a disaster. Definitely a compliment. Yeah, Buddy Rich was an amazing drummer. So he's basically saying that these are articulate enough that he doesn't know whether to practice more or throw in the drum set. The art of speaking BS, Chip, I can tell you that's the secret. So this is an example that we don't see very often. This comes from Frank, and it's a bluesy, but it's a Smurf dial. As Dino says, Holy Smurf. Reference 116613. And he says they're underappreciated for what they are, because we mostly see the explosive, gradiented blue dials. But this with a flat blue is also something quite interesting. I feel like they might be quite collectible one day. It's incredible. What an amazing selection of watches we've looked at already. Yeah. Chip means the caliber of Founder Timeless's collection. Yeah, I agree that too, Tom, for sure. I mean, there's no competing really. Okay, I'm going to carry on. I'm going to carry on through. But seeing a Smurf dial, something unique. As Megan says, never seen this before. It's gorgeous, really nice pairing. And he also sent in a loom shot, which is appreciated. Oops, loom shot of the watch. It's always nice, bluesy. It's a classic. It's definitely a 90s and 80s piece. Chip Gage saying the point was that no matter how hard most of us try, we'll never have a collection like. Yeah, I agree, Chip. And again, I don't make the show an area to talk about money and showing off. And there have been discussions before where I've shared on Instagram a lineup of pieces that are coming up, and some have said that it's just so brash and it's all just a show of wealth and everything else. And I really don't believe that. I hope you don't believe that either. It's a time when we can appreciate variety, variance, what people have in their collections, what they wear, what their tastes are like. In the case of the Founder family, they pretty much have everything, so they can wear everything and anything, which is pretty amazing. Not many people can say that. Not even the most hardcore collectors out there can say that. And I mean, James is wanting to open a museum one of these days. So just think about that. It's incredible. So thank you for this, Frank. Good seeing a Smurf blue dial for a change. And then we jump to an Old Faithful. I was going to say Old Faithful. And geez, we're hitting the 2-hour mark and I'm tripping over my words. An Old Faithful, but I also wanted to say favorite. An Old Faithfit. It's a good new word there. We can put that in the dictionary. A watch can be a memory. That too, for sure. And I'm going to carry on through. So the 114270, as many have said, a solid bracelet, a solid end link, just a classic 36 mil, an old Faithfit. What is wrong with me? Great looking piece though. People like to complain, always, Dino. I mean, envy is a thing that drives the world nowadays, and I think it's so wrong. You shouldn't let envy drive you at all. You should appreciate that these things are just things at the end of the day. They're just objects, and we just like talking about them, sharing, what these pieces are with all of us. So in general, Old Faithful, we love this piece. We've chatted about it so often before. This watch has actually been worn, which I really appreciate. You can see it's been scuffed up and used. You can keep this in your collection or just as a one watch, and you're pretty much sorted for life. And now we're going to carry on through because, we have so many still to go. I'm actually quite overwhelmed. I should have actually hurried up through some of these pieces. Thank you for this, Gabriel. Next, we're jumping to Graham, who sends in a Farah. Oh dear, I'm going to butcher this. Bornato 2. So it's an English-designed watch made in Switzerland, I think. Got to remember that story. I don't know the full details, but I love how he's paired the orange strap with, or maybe this is how it comes standard, with the numerals around the dial, the blued hands, the yellow seconds hand, the orange highlight on the GMT hand. Great pairing, really nice selection of elements. And believe it or not, just like the Omega and the Vacheron that we saw earlier. It's hilarious. I mean, there's this relationship. You guys don't know each other from Adam, but you're sending in watches that are virtually identical or share the same themes. You know what I mean? And Mark's saying, we go to an art gallery knowing that we could never own the paintings. Yeah, I agree. And that's generally the approach I like to take when it talks about whether you should own a watch to appreciate its aesthetics, to appreciate it in general. Do you need to own Picasso's Guernica or his, what was it, those prostitute paintings that he did, etc., to appreciate what he was trying to show? Cubism. Do you need to own Van Gogh in order to appreciate the painting? I actually really like that comparison. So when we look at a watch aesthetically, I'm sure we can appreciate and not appreciate elements. And that way, yeah, there's so much to it. It's a great hobby. I really enjoy just chatting about watches and design. Try and push design into the discussion too, if possible. Going to catch up with all of you here while I move on to the next piece. Thank you for this, Graham. Really interesting. So it's called the Farah Universal, the GMT dual time. Looks pretty. Did I say this is running seconds? This could easily be. Oh, hold on a sec. This is running seconds, and this is your GMT hand. Here I'm thinking it's the date, but the date's inside there. Excuse me. I'm trying to refer to chats and everything in between. Now, next to Hamido, he sends in, I should have looked at this photo first, gorgeous shot of a JLC medium small seconds. They have a few reversos on the show, I think, if I remember right. But here we get to appreciate the way the light hits all of the elements, this contemporary shape. I love the calf skin of the body. This actually could be horse leather, I don't know. But overall, I mean, you can't really go wrong with a JLC. The serifs on those numerals. And like I try and ask everyone, when they send in a JLC shot, please try and send in a bit of the opening to show off the reverso element and all of those details. Getting back to the chat, saying hi. Let's talk about explorers being nice. Dean saying, I get to come here and live vicariously through other people that enjoy collecting what I collect. Perfect answer. And there's so much more going on. Megan saying, I like the Fairer brand, but never owned one. Need to learn more about them. It's another brand I need to cover. Time. Time is one of the elements that you struggle with when it comes to preparing stuff. Kudos to my bladder for never needing a toilet. You know, Tom, I prepare. I have a full-on, what is it called? Urinary catheter rigged up here, believe it or not, behind the scenes. No. I'm pretty good with my bladder. Healthy. I'm not diabetic, which helps. And generally drain the main vein before the show begins. So that's pretty great. I love these pieces, and I just love the fact that we can enjoy the reverso styling and the way the polishing is being done, radial brushing around here. The finishing in general. It's a gorgeous photo. Amido, you sent in a beautiful piece. And Pampers on the chair. Johnny boy, for sure. Absolutely. Colostomy bag. I don't need Pampers. I have a colostomy bag and I have a catheter paired off. Perfect combination. Weekday hustle. Happy 4th of July. I've said that like 6 times already, but to everyone joining from the States, welcome and happy 4th. Well done for getting rid of the Union Jack and taking the force. Have a Cartman setup. Triforce. It's one of my favorite South Park episodes, actually. I love it. South Park. It's classic. So thank you for sending these in, Hamido. Next, we're jumping to Jack. Jack last week sent in a great selection of Grand Seiko shots, and he sent in his coveted Whirlpool. So he thought he would focus in on the model in a bit more detail. We get to highlight the elements on the dial. This is known by the community as the Whirlpool, as a collector, and as a collector, collector family. And I just love the details. He's got a superb camera. He's captured all the little elements. Look how it blows me away. I mean, I can get in closer. Look how well everything's been addressed. And I love how when you buy into a brand, you start learning where the money really goes. The attention really goes into the parts that you would never see unless you're looking under a microscope. And that's what makes these watches valuable to the person who enjoys watches, the enthusiast. They want to see detail. And as a pairing, he sent some more. I love this. I think this is just a standard snowflake in the background, but here's another shot here. And another shot of the rotor. We just get to appreciate the finer details. I don't know what this rotor is made out of. I mean, it looks like marble, but might need to clarify in the chat, anyone who's there. But this being a 36,000 beats per minute, high beat variant, meaning that the watch beats so fast, it looks almost like a quartz. There's no tick to it whatsoever. You have to look really close. Nice dial on the GS, Megan says. Yeah, I completely agree. Absolutely gorgeous. Okay, going to carry on through Jacks. Thank you for sending these in again. We have looked at them. We looked at them last week, but seeing them in more detail, I mean, looking at the dial and appreciating that is what it's all about, really, at the end of the day. Next, we're jumping to John. Getting back onto the sports bandwagon. We're looking at a Kermit Submariner that looks to be in phenomenal condition. This looks to be one of the later versions. I don't see a flat 4. Now, please, I'm useless when it comes to collecting. I don't know much about the variants, but I think the color of the bezel also indicates something else. I'm just going to leave this on the screen for a while. The Kermit is a watch that's really grown on me. I think as a 50th anniversary, if I'm not wrong, it's the model that does capture the brand very well with the use of green. It's subtle. It's made of adamantium. Yeah, for sure, Alex. Dial Masters Grand Seiko. Yeah, I agree, Dean. It really is. Heat treated. You'll find that practically everything on Grand Seiko is heat treated. Hieroglyphics. It's made. Kermit. Yeah, it's great. Aluminium bezel. Yeah. So this watch in general, The color scheme is great. The contrast between the green and the black works well together. I do still appreciate the Tudor Harrods edition, even though I rip on the navy blue. I think the Harrods edition with the use of that olive drab, it's a great combination as well. Yeah, stunning model. And we've seen a few of these on the show before, but it's been a while since we've seen a Kermit. Solid end links, that's something else Clinton mentions. But I feel like this is the more modern reference in the line. Could be wrong there. Okay, going to move on through. John, thank you for sending this piece in. I've got to carry on. Next, we're going to see some nice vintage Rolex pieces. And yeah, we can start with these two. Joseph sends in, and this was basically in line with the Phillips auction that we saw the other day. He sends in a 1675, and I was struggling to determine what the Submariner is on the right, but I concluded saying it's a 16800. It looks to be a transitional, but I might be wrong. It could be a 1680, but the crystal is it acrylic? I don't know. Is this a 1680? I think it is. With a long triangle, it feels to be a 1680. Here we get to appreciate two watches from a similar timeline. It is, thank you, Clinton. It is a 1680. Similar timeline, but different in how they've aged, which I think is nice. Well, okay, I'm going to catch up with you in the chat. Megan's saying, only my father, weekday hustle, has been collecting for last 24 hours. Started collecting Dirty Dozen watches with him at 10 years. It's amazing. I mean, Megan has really been brought up by watches, which is pretty spectacular. And yeah, as a pairing, sweet GMT. So this version, being a later variant, I saw a snippet of Antiques Roadshow today where this guy really underplayed another 1675. It had an eagle beak, crown guard setup. It had a small GMT hand, so it's a very early 60s model. And this guy didn't mention any of that on the show, which I think is very poor. The real watch collectors look at this and are just like, yeah, whatever. But, you know, when it comes to the general populace, they see a GMT and they think, Pepsi, so it's a pilot watch, etc. Nice piece, though. And as people are saying, the loom is phenomenal, spectacular, so clean and clear. The condition is also fantastic. I mean, look at the case. Clean, no polishing. I love the fact that when we talk about Rolex, we always just refer to the simple things like dial, no polishing, etc. And then to the 1680 also. Dial, I feel like this dial might have been replaced. It looks very new for what it is, but every watch ages differently. And on the different straps and everything, I just think it's such a nice pairing. So we've just seen some vintage models. Joseph sends in more. Oh, geez. He sends in some more pieces, as we will now see in a second. Let's move on to the next. A bronze IWC Spitfire. I feel like I'm going to be linking videos in the corner of the screen for everyone. So I'm going to link one now saying bronze watches. What was the title? I made a video about bronze watches a few months back. I'll link that in the corner if I can. But the Spitfire, I don't know the reference. Is it like a Mark 15 or something? I don't know, I struggle. But all in all, I mean, they captured very well. The use of the rivets on the leather strap is very period correct. The sizing is a bit more contemporary. Desk diver, there's talking diver on a desk, scandalous. It's all talking about the Rolexes. But all in all, I mean, it captures the Mark 11 in a very specific way, but also has lots of Flieger elements behind it too. Great looking piece. Bronze, love it or hate it. It's a very peculiar model, very peculiar material, excuse me. They've improved alloys over time, but as it is, yeah. Anyway, going to carry on through. Oh, and the matte green dial is something good. Let's try and see that. No, that's how you do a matte green dial, Dino said. It is very nice, subtle. In this photo, you can see it's very subtle, but complementary with the bronze. Probably works very well when the bronze goes that green tinge over time. Oof. Okay, next up we have one of my favorites. Demetrius, don't go yet. One more watch. Stay. Vacheron. Historique American 1921 that we love. Rose gold. And it is another one of the favorites. Can you believe we've had two Vacherons already on the show, both of which being historique variants, this being a much older inspiration. But talking about sharing our love for sports watches, which is the theme. This is the last watch, Demetrius, and then you can go. I don't think there's anything. Oh, geez, there's so many good pieces coming up, Demetrius. Really, you're going to miss overseas. You're going to miss Breguet's. Stay for a little bit longer. Another 5 minutes. So we all love this watch. It's Alice in Wonderland, for sure. That's a great caption. Talking about sports watches, this really is an original sports watch made for racing drivers. This could easily be a pilot's watch from back in the day as well. I love that they've captured that styling. Breguet hands, numerals, the texture on the dial. If we pull in and have a look, you can see this watch has been worn. I'm sure these are scratches and not thumbprints. This watch has been loved and used, and it's just great. Sadly, of all the watches, it's one that I really love for its quirkiness, but I would never be able to wear it because I'm a right-hand watch wearer, so it wouldn't work very well for me. I'll just have to tilt my neck sideways, but that's a small sacrifice. No, great looking model. And then he sends next to it, I feel like this was at an AD, but he sends in the Tourbillon overseas. And it's one of the best executions of a Tourbillon from the Vacheron line because of the Maltese cross and how it's been implemented in the balance there. But overall, this is still covered in plastic. We'll get a good idea. And very soon, we are going to be approaching Juan. And Juan sends in another overseas that we love. There's mention about loving the Open 6. I agree. Open 6, Open 9, 12. The 12 for me is also the 11, the 10, 11, 12. I just love the sloped nature of how they've addressed it. Just everything. It's so peculiar. And being someone who loves design, it's such a quirky model. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's great. Such a nice piece. And then Blue Dial overseas. Again, I think the way they've done the Tourbillon here with the Maltese cross inside, crisp, clear, simple, addresses the brand very well. As we know, the Maltese cross is their bread and butter. And the way they've translated that into the watch, it's very well thought out, actually. It's a very clever exercise. So Joseph, thank you for sending these in. Great selection. We've got some vintage, we've got some modern. And I'm missing so many of you in the chat, but now we are going to jump. Let's jump to our man, Juan. Now, Juan sends in, this is not the only pocket watch that we're going to see. Great bit of storytelling behind it, though. So let me just get to the chat for a second, and we can look at this for a moment. Great watch for a chef on the pass. Megan says, yeah, I agree, for sure. Rich Buddy, you're back. Had to miss the last 90 minutes. Rich Buddy, it's great to have you. The selection has been amazing, but there are still some amazing pieces coming up, if I'm not wrong. Very focused pieces on certain collections. I think we have quite a few like mini collections we're going to be looking at now. And Dino saying Vacheron and their creativity. It's a brand that really does understand creativity. And Megan saying she doesn't like the Vacheron Open Heart. Interesting. With regards to being a tourbillon, I feel like they've addressed it well. But that's, to each their own. I agree. Open heart, open movements in general, they can be very divisive. So let's check out this pocket watch. So this is an Elgin from, wait for it, 1888. Belonged to Juan's great-great-grandfather. And just in general, it is stamped Benedict Brothers, Brooklyn, New York, full 18-karat gold. And talk about a piece of history. Looks like the enamel has cracked over time. Let's have a look at the details here. So I don't know if this is the top or the back because all sides are engraved, but it is just absolutely incredible seeing how well this watch has aged. 1888, ladies and gents. How old is that? I'm not even going to try. Someone do the maths. Like 123 years old. That was probably terrible. 140, 130, 133. Please, someone clarify. Immediately post-Civil War, Eric Bell says. That history I do not know. Now I see why I should stay. That's it. You see, Demetrius, we suddenly jump into something that is worth looking at, and it's difficult to know. So this is an example. This is the back, I think, and this is the front. I do not know. They're both sides are engraved. There's a low side where we have this gorgeous coin edging. Look at the finishing around the case itself. But it gets better. Let's have a look at the side profile. Another shot here. Another shot of the top. This being a model that's keyless, you can actually wind it from the crown at the top here. And the movement itself, oh, ladies and gents, this is from 1887. Can someone do the maths? 132, Clive, thank you, you're a legend. This watch really has aged pretty damn well. Everything down to, I mean, look at this script. This epitomizes Victorian script, the way it's done. Very Germanic, actually. I find this is a more Germanic way of how you would, very high Gothic. Funnily, this is a great element to attach. The Victorian era, the 1800s, was a time when they celebrated high Gothic. And it's when they started getting back into trying to build grand cathedrals and use those elements in their designs. So here we see a perfect example of high Gothic text used in that time period when it was in fashion. I love it. I love the stuff. Design and history, it all melds together. So this movement is old. Half Hunter. Yes, it is a Hunter case back. You can see the back opens. It's got two parts to it. Yeah, it's great. Really is something special. And this is not the only pocket watch we're going to see. We're also going to see an English pocket watch later on in the show. Script is more Germanic. Yeah, it really is nice. I don't know how I suddenly cooked up that idea. But Elgin from 1887, and it still looks absolutely phenomenal. Will pocket watches ever come back into fashion? Juan's saying it's still working. He's in the chat. Fantastic. Still working, by the way, still keeping good time. It's great. Amazing. But then we also have his usual submissions, which is a attache. This is what he calls a Hamilton attache from 1961. I have this exact same bracelet. It's pretty amazing. But as most of us might know who've been a part of the show in the past, Juan loves collecting vintage Hamiltons. That's one of his main driving forces. And we'll see. Moving to the next model, we have a Pacer, Rockford. I see Rockford here, but you mentioned Bradford. Oh, geez, I'm going to botch it. Hamilton Electric. Look how 50s this is. Can you get any more 50s than screws and bolts and nuts and everything? What was the thinking there? I'm guessing it had to do with Rockford being a supplier from back in the day when it comes to supplying screws and nuts and bolts and all that sort. I love it. And then next to it, we also have a Pacer. Now, Juan also attached a photo of Elvis Presley wearing one of these. This was the Presley watch back in the day. And you can see, again, talking about the electric, it basically used a precursor to Bulliver's tuning fork system, battery powered, but also mechanical. It didn't have a mainspring, but it was mechanical in the way it worked. And I think it's so stylish. Mentioned by 73 saying, love the Pacer. It's very stylish. I mean, Ventura is another example we talk about. And the asymmetrical case, 50s inspirations, for those of you who don't know, 50s inspirations really grabbed onto the 30s deco period of streamlining. And we see how that was pushed into these watches in particular. It's definitely a watch of its time, but it looks just great for it. And Mr. C, thank you for the super chat, brother. I hope this has been a good episode. I really enjoy just prattling on. Nice to throw in a bit of design timing into the mix too. It's great. So Juan sends in another shot of his overseas, this time mid-drowning. And some people might pull away in terror saying this watch shouldn't be in the water, but it's great seeing an overseas being used as a sports watch. This being in line with the Royal Oak, the Nautilus, watches that we generally don't see in the water. Nice seeing this watch actually being used in its habitat overseas. I mean, for a name like that, it has to be used. The one and done watch. I think someone could be so happy getting this as a one watch for a collection, even though you can't have a one watch collection. A one watch that solves all your problems. This is a great example. And everything it's supplied with, rubber straps, leather straps, full bracelet, the whole deal. It's great. I love the effect of the water on the dial and everything else. Moving next to his Panerai, this being a 40mm variant, if I'm not wrong. And it's a gem. Nice seeing Panerai that's a little bit smaller for a change, because generally Panerais are pretty overbuilt and huge. Luminor, this is a new model too, if I'm not wrong. Supposed to be over the seas, not in them, BDev. Agree. It's supposed to be worn on a yacht, you know. Yeah, it's a great looking piece, this Luminor. And then we have two more from Juan. This is great, because generally Juan sends in a lot of references. This has been a little bit more toned down, a bit simpler to look at. Next, let's look at the Speedmaster. We have seen one professional already. No, we've seen Clive's 321 earlier. We've seen one professional. This is the second, so third. Three professionals on the show. Not bad. I don't know if there are any more. But overall, you can't beat a standard Hesalite. Great. We've also seen the Tintin earlier. Oh my, you know what? No point in me even trying to recollect all the watches that we look through. But last but not least in his set is one of my favorites, and it is the 5157 Breguet. This was actually featured as a, it is the 5157. This was featured as a cover photo a couple of weeks back. because I think it's an absolute gem. The second Breguet we've had on the show. When did I show your 321, Clive asks? Well, when we had C on the show, I'd imagine it was maybe about an hour ago. Yeah, Clive, you've been a busy boy. You've missed quite a few things. We chatted about the gross way that you purchased it, which is funny. But Breguet as a brand in general, and of course, Juan is nice enough to send us a movement shot, which is always appreciated. So we get to see, oof, this is why you buy these models. Look at that, 5157. I love the fact that they put the actual name of the reference on the back so that if you are number challenged like me, it helps. Look at that rotor, the back. It is so crisp. The finishing is phenomenal. Breguet as a brand. I'm seriously considering Breguet as the next watch that I pick up, just because I think it's so out there and peculiar. A real classical inspired piece that stays true to its heritage in many ways. I really love the marine line that they're working on at the moment. Let me get to the chats. I've missed you for a long time. I'm going to hit the wine again. Johnny Boy is saying, can't go wrong with the Breguet. Stunningly simple. It's beautiful. It's your artifact. Everyone, thank you for this evening. I have to sign off early. Go and enjoy yourself, dear artifact. I'm sure you're going out for drinks or something else. Being July 4th, you're all going to be enjoying yourselves over today. And they're talking about overseas and everything else. Yeah. So, dear artifact, as always, your comments are so poignant, and it's a pleasure having you here. You highlight great little details that don't come to mind at first. The dirty of deeds, Clive. Everyone's ripping into you about your stealing of the Speedmaster. Breguet, absolute gem. Next, we're jumping to Junior Johnson. Now, I don't know if he's in the chat, but he is normally here. Junior has been going ballistic trying to send this watch through to me, and I got all his emails, but as I hope you can appreciate, when I get like 160 emails over the course of, and I'm not kidding you, 5 days, it gets a bit difficult to reply to emails in general, so I don't. But he sends in this date just that he bought in 1971 for his 21st birthday. And you've got to love a linen dial. You've got to love it. And they attacked the date just so well back then. Though what I love so much is the level of restraint that these watches have. The fluting on the bezel doesn't need to be brash and in your face. It just needs to be subtle enough to see, noticeable, but not there when you want it out of the way, not ostentatious, you know what I mean? And he sends in another shot here. We get to enjoy the two-tone. I think that's the same shot. You get to enjoy the two-tone and the linen dial in general. And Junior, if you are in the chat, there he is. He's here. Great. I did receive all of your emails. I'm sorry for not replying to you sooner. You were reaching out to all sorts of people to try and send the watch through to me, but I did get it. And it's a pleasure having it. I think this is the only vintage date just that we're going to be featuring on the show, so it's quite special. And the date just is a watch that I think is going to see a resurgence, especially now because of what's going on with the sports. It never died. I mean, the date just never died as a watch, but I mean to say it's going to become more popular. I think Oyster Perpetuals and the date just are going to start creeping up in the desirability category because of what's happening with the sports market. I mean, it seems like this fling, I feel like these flings are going to die. Steel sports is going to eventually simmer away, and so we're going to get into something else. So it goes. And Dino's saying Rolex got it right 60 years ago with the dial text. Yeah, less is more. And remember back then, I mean, yes, these watches were really like based around the prestige. I also love the way the dial's been arranged here. Almost semi-pipe pan in a way, how it sits inside. The minute track is set inside. It's a great piece. I mean, it's timeless from 1971, and he still rocks it, and it's all you need. So thank you, Junior. I've got to carry on with these pieces. How long have we been running for? 2 hours, 2.5 hours at this point. I tell you, I struggle. I really struggle with keeping this like a cohesive discussion, but keeping it on track as well. Next comes from Chrono Craze, and thank you, Junior. Thank you so much for the super chat. Really, absolute pleasure. And Cardinal saying that the OP 34 to 39 underrated. I fully agree. I've been eyeing a 34 millimeter OP, which I think is going to be good to talk about. I'd like to make a video about it. Chrono Craze saying, my creative solution for modding a watch to add lume, but not look like adding lume and change your overall design aesthetics. Very clever. Inspired by the Mondaine stop-to-go backlight. Brilliant. So Mondaine being the Swiss Railways watch, has a very unique feature with the way that the loom works on the dial. So we see if we switch to the loom shot, he calls it the blue eclipse. I love this. Having a backlight behind the hands, I don't even know how you manage to loom the hands this way. Is it just through, I would imagine you shine the light on and it reflects off the dial onto the back of the hands themselves. This idea of this underglow neon effect, I think is superb, absolutely superb. Very nice. I like the fact that you highlighted the mundane as the inspiration. It's very good. Well done. Marcus Agrippa. Marcus, not Aurelius, but Marcus Vipsanius. Datejust is still a sports watch, just a dressy one. Yeah, I have one from '74 that belonged to my grandfather. It's still a waterproof, rugged as it left the factory. Amazing, right? Amazing. And BDev, the podcast needs an intermission. Yeah, I agree. I mean, you could have some background music. I could plug in the guitar and play some licks. That'd be funny. Rolex got it right with the dial text with the deep sea. They built in the advertisement that the dial to create ultimate deep diver from his adventures deep sea. They're in the pool, Triforce. Yeah, there's a good story behind the deep sea. I would agree. The deep sea challenge and that background there. I love this. What a great, and this is a Presage, if I'm not wrong. Presage reference SARD 0007. Really rolls off the tongue. You've got everything from a full calendar. You've got Saturday to Sunday. You've got, Saturday to Sunday and the way the dial's been done. Power reserve, and you have your full date complication at the base. Really nice looking piece. Chrono Craze. Thank you for sending this in. Reflects off the white dial. It's great. Megan saying on set. Yeah, it's good. It might be good to have an intermission. Be nice. It'd be nice to have a proper setup one day where we have a full on proper live show going on in the background with music and everything too. Okay, so next to Koji, I think Koji is based in Japan. He sends in a vintage 18-karat JLC chronograph. This is most definitely from the 40s, and I really enjoy this. Everything from the telemeter scale, that's the easiest way to tell, to the way the subdials are woven in between the tracks. This is the way you can really tell that it is, a watch from that time. And notice that it's not Le Coutre. I don't know why it's just Jaeger or Jaeger, however you want to say it, but I love it. It's so period correct for what it represents, and sometimes you can really appreciate that about a watch. Thinking about commissioning a new Cardinal mug. Cardinal Monk. I've been doing this for a while. Want one if I do. Clive, you know what? I'm actually thinking of bringing out a brand of T-shirts very soon, and I would love to share them with the Patreons and everyone else. I need to get a hold of you all on the email and share some of my ideas that I've been dealing with recently. But Cardinal mug might be great, depending on who's on the Cardinal mug for sure. A mug for a live show is always appreciated. Chrono Craze saying, additionally, always felt the white enamel dial deserved blue hands, so I changed that from stock black color. It really does look good. I'm sorry that I couldn't hold on it for longer. We really have to keep rolling. So Demetrius says, may I see my Smith's T-Rex one more time? I call it T-Rex. Yeah, good. Let's try and get it back for you, Demetrius. I just have to scroll all the way up. Koji is the last. Let's see. Demetrius, Smith's on shark mesh. There it is. I think it's great. I love the way the shark mesh has been done here. And there's mention about very James Bond-ish in the way it was done. Great photo as well, Demetrius. Love it. I really do love it. And now I'm going to get back down to Koji. We're doing pretty good for time. All things considered, we've looked at a great selection of pieces. Also notice the way that the tachymeter and the telemeter uses different color schemes. Blued hands, period correct, and stunning. See, it also says fabrication, Swiss. Love it. It's pure Swiss in the purest sense. Thank you for this, Koji, for sending it in. Next from Lane. Lane is normally in the chat. Bolivar Snorkel. And there's talk that it's a Devil Diver, because I guess it's also rated to 666 meters. Being a watch from 1972, you notice the dial has gone a bit tropical over time, which is always appreciated. And typical of 72 dials and watches in general, we have orange highlights there. So let's see what else is going on in the chat. Get a guest host to be your intermission. Jamie, that's a good idea. I mean, again, it's the idea of having people online, but it's working out the technicalities behind how we would share the discussion. Would be good, though. I'm really thinking about how we could make some kind of theme where we could have group discussions on the show as well. Zane saying no to T-shirts. Caps are much better. That's a nice idea, Zane. That's a very nice idea. I think we could maybe have a vote. kind of a community vote. What I'm trying to do is incorporate the industrial design nature behind the channel. 666 feet, thanks Tom. The industrial design element to whatever comes out, which, yeah. So we can do a vote maybe on a community post one day soon. I don't know. Keep rolling. 73 says it's great. And Demetrius, thank you for being here. I see you've left us. Love the JLC to reissue the watch, but with a grand faux enamel dial. Oof, that would be gorgeous. And 73 says, love the format. We try. We all try here. So yeah, I love the fact that this dial is going tropical. It has everything, day, date, simple enough. This is so typical of the late 60s and the 70s. Fully graduated bezel, T-Swiss, T-dial, even the bracelet. Everything seems of that period, Okay, I've got to carry on. Lane, thank you for sending this in. And wouldn't you believe, we get another Tudor Black Bay, this being sent in by MacDam, who's wearing a Black Bay 41, if I'm not wrong, because it's an ETA with a smiley self-winding with a Tudor rose. I think they did these dials so much better. That's just me. I think the way that they addressed the originals with a rose, Tudor rose, was what made the Tudor brand so imperative back in the day. And it's kind of a sad thing that they've moved away to the shield. I think the rose is so much more elegant because it lines up with what Tudor is. Tudor as a monarch-linked family makes more sense. Let me try and get this closer in for all of you to see. So the story behind Tudor, let me try and remember the background. So the House of Tudor was formed through the House of, wow. I just had to study this for a stupid exam that I never wrote. Not the House of, I'm going to completely botch it. There's someone in the chat who probably knows better than me. Basically, the forming of two houses. Henry Tudor basically brought these two houses together. A bit of intermarriage between two. The Tudor went after York, House of York. It was York and something else, two groups. And the rose was really representative of the bonding of these two houses, which formed Tudor as a brand, as a name. Call it a brand. I mean, monarchy really is a brand at the end of the day. After Richard III died at Bosworth. Yeah, that's it, that fight. I don't remember who it was. It was York, and it was something else that formed the House of Tudor. Idiot. I just studied it a few. Lancaster. Thank you, Matthew. So House of Lancaster, House of York formed the Tudor. They both had two different colored roses. One was white, one was red. Together they formed the white and red motif that we know. And that's what Tudor is about. So I don't know why they lost it there. And the smiley self-winding, it's just everything that makes the brand what it used to be. And sadly, that's all gone. It's almost like they've wanted to re-identify themselves as a family. Zane, a white cap with the same logo style as YouTube profile pic and gray would be nice. It'd be really nice and clean. Tudor is greater than Hodor. Thanks, Tao. I would definitely want to make it, again, designed. I want to add some design motifs to it as well. If you would just enjoy the logo, then for sure, that'd be great. But there are some more elements that I'd like to add to the mix to make it more vibrant. I'll be sharing with you in the next few weeks, I think. I'm working on a few ideas. MacDam, thank you for sending this in. We've been chatting all about Tudor, thanks to your sharing. And this being the Black Bay 41, it's a great size. Next, we're moving to Marco. Marco sent in a whole range of pieces on his wrist. He says my camera is shocking, but we get to enjoy all the elements here. And I cherry-picked a few that he sent in to us. And as we can see, we're getting quite close to the end of the list, which is great. War of the Roses, Maynard says. And that's where it all began. I mean, they called it the War of the Roses because those two houses were both represented by a white and a red rose that came together to form the House of Tudor. Sad that the rose isn't there anymore. Megan saying an IDGuy NATO brand would be great. Yeah, I mean, it would be nice, but I think it's just so overdone nowadays as well. How about IDGuy underwear? Ooh, Kukuru, now you're speaking my language. How about some horn merch? You guys are giving me giving me some great ideas. Tom Austin, Tighty Whities, for sure. That's a really nice idea. Be a bit more diverse, and have a big watch. Have a watch, like have a Rolex in the front. Have a Submariner right there, or a Deep Sea. That's fantastic. Done to death. Talking about NATO straps, I think they are. There is an element that I have an idea to maybe put a spin on it in a different way, but and a watch box or something. But I'll need a lot more money to make them. There's so many ideas, but I struggle. So I'm a one-man band still, ladies and gents. Socks, great all around for Christmas. Designed watch holder. That was mentioned in the very beginning, Mark, for sure. A big clock on the front. That'd be so good. That's actually so tongue-in-cheek. I love it. I love to just, that's a good idea. I'm going to think of something like that. You know what? You've really, maybe it's just a Speedo or just swimming trunks. That'd be fantastic. Okay, let's get through these pieces. This is great. I mean, we've been doing this for 2.5 hours and it's still a joy. You guys are you make this so much more diverse and fun. Okay, hitting the wine. How about depends for those? Depends for future podcasts. Me never didn't get that. Mankini is not a bad idea either. Okay, so looking at these pieces here, Aquaterra. I'm just going to run through. He sent me a whole selection of his pieces. They're very diverse, which is a nice change. Aquaterra, I think they've addressed so well. This being the earlier version with the vertical striping across the dial, and I love the fact that the date window has been framed so well thought out here. Next up, from Marco, one of my favorite watches that he sends in. Look at this piece. It is beautiful. Bomb and Mercier. I think it's 18 or 14 karat. No, it's 18 karat from around the 50s. And I just think it's one of the most clean looking models we've shared on the show already. Again, lining up with sports watches again. Marcella saying, I've just arrived. You're not too late. We've only been going for 2.5 hours. There's still some amazing watches to go. Don't worry. Megan saying a watch tool for your key ring. Ooh, that's a good idea. Leather pouch. I was thinking a travel case might be quite nice as well. That's a good thought. Marcus saying, after all males from Lancaster and York died fighting each other, Henry Tudor won the Battle of Bosworth Field. Richard III of York died. Henry married his later sister, the Tudor era. Thank you for that, Marcus. I mean, of all people, Marcus Agrippa would know, right? Travel case is great. I was thinking like a travel pouch maybe. I don't know. Lots of ideas. We can just chat about ideas for hours. I love the combination of elements here. So unique, hobnails on the dial. Use of blue and red. We've noticed this follow through over the models recently. Moving on to the next, Breitling Navitimer Fighters Edition. Now, we haven't seen any Navitimers on the show. Do enjoy the contrast here. Admittedly, it's very detailed. It's stupidly detailed, but that's what makes the Navitimers so unique. Open 6 mentioned, and that was to do with the fanny pack. You guys are just the worst. Open 6 at the base here. That's great. Breitling Navitimer. As it is, we have a panda aesthetic, which is something we don't see. Nice Bond Mercier, Megan says. It is nice. Fanny pack, Robert says, that's a laugh. And Zane saying, I'd come up with a cap first, then try a few things after. It's a great idea, Zane. I really like that because I'm someone who actually is in desperate need of a cap, which is, how about my own lever escapement? I'm not so much a fan of lever escapements, Tao. I love the radial escapements more. I prefer the frictionless stuff. That's why I'm a coaxial guy at the end of the day. Maybe just designing my own attempt at a movement. That'd be funny, right? Nice Breitling with gold wings. Still, that's also counterbalance is a killer. Are you saying that as a good thing, BDev? I think it really does serve the watch well, especially since we're talking about a chronograph where this hand is set at center. There is a nice use of that. It's really elegant, actually. And the gold Breitling logo, I'm guessing this was like early 2000s. No? Don't know. But as far as a slide rule goes, it's a little bit excessive. I mean, let's be real. Using this as a calculator, don't think it's the most practical thing for every day. In saying that, though, on Thursday's video, we're going to be talking all about sailing and the longitude problem. And this watch would have probably helped in a few situations. Mark P says, no wonder you don't think you have any decent wine in the UK as you drink it whilst sucking on fishermen's friends. For that, no, it's a cough sweet. Yeah, I mean, my taste buds are shot, Mark P. I've filled my system with fishermen's friends. No. Speaking of which, I'm going to hit another one because I've been doing this for 2.5 hours. My voice is slowly going, but anyway, it's a joy. Mine was a blue Navitimer, Star Trek tech manual. That's great. Tin box for Fisherman's Friends. Ooh, IDguy branded Fisherman's Friends tin box. Oh, you guys are the best. You guys are the best. Next to Marco, I love this Bulliver. He sent in a few more pieces that I cut out. But this being a Bulliver from 1958, 23 jewels. And it's just so classy, simple, elegant, understated. It's the kind of watch you would expect to see on Mad Men, even though it's the wrong time period, just transitioning to the 60s. But this looks like a Mad Men watch. I'm sure they featured this. I love that, Megan. A tin box for fisherman's friends. That's a laugh. This Bulliver screams 50s. Yeah, for sure. I mean, everything from just the way the dial has been arranged. Let's not forget that these dials with the 12-3-6 format was really a 50s innovation. And same thing with the lugs, where the lugs have been pushed out. We've seen, as we talked about the 40s era watches, we've seen just how these lugs sometimes work, sometimes don't. For this format, this almost scarab stance, the way it sits on the wrist, pretty unique. Open 9s, looks like an open 6 as well. Dauphine-styled hands, very Calatrava-esque. 50s innovation, these 12-3-6-9s with the batons. So one of the elements that I love about watch design, this to me, I'm a sucker for batons and numerals on a dial. IDguy Squale, Triforce Rich says, oh, for sure. No, what I would love is, it would be nice to do a collaborative exercise and come up with a watch, for sure. I would love to actually design a watch and share the process with you. Not to say behind the scenes, it took me a year to do. I would rather, I can be someone who can share the drawings, the tech drawings, everything behind the scenes, and show off just how the development process would work from don't get chuffed to bits, I won't, from concept to 3D model to realization to experimenting with materials and colors, and I'd love it. It'd be so good. I mean, talk about a channel focusing on industrial design. There's nothing better than actually designing a watch and sharing how the process would work. And inspirations, just inspirations in general would be amazing. Megan, thank you for the super chat saying tired. Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I feel pretty chipper. Must have been the coffee. It's hit my brain. So Miss Perpetual says Cartier meh. So this being a Tank Solo XXL, I really love the tank. I think there's something so special about the way the dial has been arranged. I'm not so much of a fan about the date complication, but I love the little quirks like Cartier being put into the numerals at the base, and just the general format. The way the watchmaker's 4 corresponds with the 8 o'clock position here. Little details, little touches like that. Also enjoy the distressed strap. But as we go through, we can see he's just sending in a selection of his pieces. This is a Mark. Oof, let me get this right. Mark 16. Damn it. Is it a Mark? It is a Mark 16. It has to be. I'm Marcus Aurelius. You know your Roman numerals. Give me some help here. This is a Mark 16, right? Marcus Agrippa. I'm always saying Marcus Aurelius. Sorry. You're the better emperor. 16. Thank you, 73 Math. I really enjoy the way they've done the numerals here. Very classical, and they all stand proud. It's an interesting piece. We've looked at a Spitfire earlier, but this example shares a bit more of a modern touch on how they would arrange the dial. Marcus Agrippa. Cartier got it right. Why should they change it? I agree. Roman numerals. I mean, you're very biased, right? Don't forget super chats for the coffee fund. Coffee fund, I think more of it's going towards Fisherman's Friends at the moment. And grocery shopping. Don't forget grocery shopping. Thank you, Megan. Really, thank you. So next from Marco, one of my favorites from the JLC line. You can see this man really enjoys 50s inspired motifs and elements. JLC Master Control. Talk about an underrated gem in the family. As someone who wants to get into the higher echelon, the higher area of horology, look at the Master Control line, because there's so much to look at and to choose from there. And just everything. The 36912 layout again. I love the very aggressive batons on the dial, the teeth elements. It's what JLC is really known for. And the date complication is just practical as an everyday. Also, don't forget it has a movement that you can look at too. Open back. I'm sure this has an open back. Might be wrong. Thomas, thank you. Watch and pray. All of you, thank you. Coffee fund, because Megan says so. Megan, you are so enforceful. It's fantastic. And Thomas, as always, is such a legend. And thank you. Thomas is always here. And I think Thomas needs an award. I actually want to make something specifically for Thomas and present it to him some way, somehow. Carrying on, Marco, another Longines flagship. This looks like an original from the 60s era, I would imagine, 50s and 60s. Why can't more brands do this? More better typefaces. Come on. Longines is a brand that doesn't shy away from using correct cursive typefaces on their dials. Also, pole router elements. Longines does some great stuff. They have a great history in their background. What's amazing is that you can really track or trace their background all the way through to the past. It's great. I really like this selection. That's why I saved them all, because I thought, because the variety is there, we get to enjoy the level of detail. And don't worry, this looks like the show is going to be a 3.5 hour pull, but as we get to the end, we're going to see some very interesting pieces. So yeah, Megan, thank you so much. Mark P, I'm so glad you're still here with us, Mark P. You generally normally go to sleep pretty early, so it's great having you here, sir, and thank you for the super chat. Custom Speedo, Robert, I agree. I think it'll be so good. You could put some kind of South African nomenclature at the back for you all. Nomos Tangenta, moving to the next model. Many people love this because it very much represents the Bauhaus aesthetic with the way the dials are done, but also the schoolroom clock effect, chip gauge. It's an absolute pleasure. And this was your Vacheron that we shared, right? That gorgeous Vacheron Calendrier from 1942. Absolutely gorgeous. One of my favorites for the show. I cannot believe the variety that we see. No, I'm getting old. No, you're not, Mark. What I do is silly. I mean, I'm told it's just ridiculous. When I tell friends of mine that I sit up and do live shows for like 3 to 4 hours on a Saturday, they don't understand. They just don't get it. They're not into watches, so I guess they wouldn't know. Mason saying, I do like those numerals. Everything about this watch really represents German styling. I just love the simple details, like the way they've addressed Nomos and Glashutte. This is so Germanic in the way they've addressed those details. This is very 30s inspired. The Bauhaus period really was at its peak, from the early 1900s to the 30s. And then the Nazis took over and the Bauhaus school was destroyed, and there's all sorts of background there. Learn about the Bauhaus period and what it really meant. It established the field of industrial design. It was a time when you weren't going to craft school. You weren't becoming a carpenter. You were learning the tools of the trade, as well as understanding just how these parts would go together. It's a great story. Mr. Perpetual, thank you. Good show. Don't worry, it's going to get better. These next few pieces coming up, oof, you're going to have a good time. There's Lungas and Pateks and there's lots coming up in a second. Trust me. You're going to enjoy it. And one of my favorite Lungas is up very soon. Marco sends in an Amiga DeVille, 14 karat. A Panerai Luminor. The variety is just great. I really like this selection because I think he did say in the email to me that most of the watches, they all come with bracelets, but he takes them off and puts them on leather straps because he just prefers them more. But as you see, he is someone who clearly loves variety, and he has the same love of batons and numerals on dials. Clearly. Mason, that is so vulgar and very true. Yeah, great looking. So this being a Mark I variant, he's got a few more. He's got a Universal Genève pole router. This one, I don't even know if this dial is supposed to look like this. From between 59 and 69. He doesn't know exactly where this watch comes from in its timeline. Thank you so much, Megan. Thank you for that. And this is the Patreon link. I need to do something more formal about sharing the Patreon page and how it works. It's nothing special. I don't have any rewards assigned to it or anything. Really, it helps me with a grocery shop once a month. That's it at the end of the day. I really do appreciate it, but you really don't have to. This whole thing is run by the goodness of your hearts. This whole show, really, you sharing the watches, it's an absolute pleasure doing this. I hope you enjoy it. I really hope you enjoy the variety on show. Pole router is gorgeous. Gerald Genter. And talking about pole router, very much highlights what we're going to talk about on Thursday. Ryan, great to have you here. I've just seen you joining. On Thursday, we're talking about the longitude problem and determining how best you were able to do it back in the day. And the pole router uses that similar kind of story where pilots used to fly from pole to pole. And yeah, it's great. Moving on to Mark next. Marco, thank you for sending these in. What an amazing selection. Oh, I love this shot. One of my favorite reissue divers on the scene, Oris 65. And again, like what ties into, we're now hitting the 3-hour mark. If you remember the beginning of the show, we were talking about reissue dive watches, this being one of the best, and another example that was featured in the reissue diver series. And just the combination of everything works so well. I love the way the numerals have been done with this piece. When you see this watch glowing in the dark, and how these numerals stand out. The negative spacing is just so old-fashioned, but also I love it. It just reminds you, I mean, this feels dangerous. It feels like you're dealing with a watch that's covered in tritium from that time period. I really enjoy it. And they did a few things between this generation, this model, and the earlier version, I think. The minute track was on the outside. I can't remember. But all in all, I mean, the size, the presence, the bracelets, everything about this piece is special. And what a great shot as well. The photo is phenomenal. So we have about, I'm looking at the selection here, we have about 25 more pieces that I'll flick through to get to the end. You really want to stay until the end because we're going to see an unveiling of two pieces that we've never seen on the show before. We haven't actually seen owned by the public very much. And that's all I'll say. Russell's pieces. Thank you, Thomas. Don't forget to give the stream a thumbs up. I don't know how the thumbs up thing works, but it really is appreciated. I mean, I think it helps with the algorithm and whatever else. I don't know. Even thumbs downs help with the algorithm too, I believe. So do what you want. Anyway, thank you, everyone. Next, thank you for this, Mark. I love the composition, the lighting. The way you've taken the shot is phenomenal. I want to see this again on the next show. Please. I really enjoy it. Longines Hydro Conquest, and this comes from Matt. And I think that this is the Matt who shared a caliber. He shared a Tag Heuer with us a couple of the last time we had a show. I feel like he was one of the youngest collectors that we have on the show. If I'm not wrong, it might be a different person, but it was his father's gift to him. I can't remember the full background story, but this was one of his first watches that he was given, and just great. Longines Hydro Conquest. It's a brand I haven't discussed. I find it to be quite a peculiar watch. It seems to ride the line between contemporary modern as well as being something a bit more classically inspired. The jury is not out with this piece yet. I'm still trying to think what it really represents in its entirety. It's a little bit conflicting with some of these elements around, but all in all, I do enjoy the way the crown guard is integrated with the pushes on the sides. Unique, interesting. I've got to carry on through. We're coming up to the 3-hour mark, and I'm sure most of us are failing and fading. Max sends in a Universal Genève 18 karat. I don't know the reference to this watch, but you can just see it's a watch from its time. Looks to be one from the 50s era-ish. And I think it's quite the gem. You know, square case, beautiful polished. I mean, we've looked at these already. Kind of reminds you of Beads of Rice bracelet, except it's flat. And just in general, all gold, Universal Genève. The way you can tell the time with this piece, I kind of love this. It's a clean dial, but you get to see on the bezel, because it's engine turned, you get to see where the plots would be placed. So here on this example, we have what, 7:45, because you can actually tell the time on the externals. This feels like a watch straight out of the 50s. It's that transitional period where they use lots of 30s motifs. Megan, thank you. Thank you for the super chat. And Miles, absolute pleasure. Keep it up. Like from Mafia Boss. This is the Universal Genève. Have just told me to forget about it. This Universal Genève just told me to forget about it. So this being a Mafia watch, does this have some kind of connection to that time period and to maybe a film that I'm not thinking about here? Was this featured in The Sopranos or something? I don't know. Unique though, bubble back, as mentioned by Marcus. Interesting. That's a Casio watch. No, it definitely isn't. But I love it. I think all the little details, like you notice the fluting around the case itself, the way it's been done, very distinct and unique. I think Juan would enjoy this watch if he's still in the chat. Next, we have Norm, who shends in a JLC Grand Reverso Duo Face and another fantastic shot. We get to enjoy. This is also a dual time, if I'm not wrong. It has a GMT complication. No, can't remember. But another example of a JLC that we can appreciate. I really love the way that this track has been integrated up here. And we switch to the back of the watch. We get to see it again. Day-night indicator being black. Oh, it's fantastic. Something about JLC, the way they do these duo face. Sopranos, I guessed it right, Dino? Jeez. I don't know what it is. It's like as the night proceeds, so my brain suddenly wakes up. It does look pretty big. I would imagine this being a Grand Reverso, they're like, what, 48, 49 millimeters lug to lug? Don't know. Might need to correct me there. But yeah, great looking piece. Here we really get to see how the light plays on the dial. All the small details, like look at this stippling, whatever you would call it, on the outside of the minute track here. Very unique. JLC, whoops, JLC as a brand, stunning. They do such a good job. Next, I've got to carry on through these because we are going to run probably over 3.5, and I definitely don't want to do that. This is a Certina Water King from between 65 and 70. But what's even more interesting is the email came in and I said, well, that's a MiG. And this being a MiG, let me try and get this right. It's a MiG 15 UTI supplied to the Finnish military from, we would say, the 60s, right? Yeah, MiG 15. Thank you, Matthew and Eric. Just seeing that intake, you just know it's a MiG, the way it's styled. So great pairing. And this Certina, another brand. I mean, Certina is quite a legendary Swiss name from back in the day. And it's just another clean and clear example of a dress piece. Matthew saying 2-seat trainer. That's great. I really need to down the wine. I have barely been drinking anything during the show. But then all of you in the chats, I'm sorry if I'm missing you. Again, tag me in the chat if you want to catch my attention a bit easier. I am just going to continue rolling through these pieces as we do. Thank you for this Pekka. Love the shot next to the MiG. I don't know why it's standing there. It looks like it's out of commission. You can see by the glass, it's definitely out of commission. But hey, it's cool having skeletons, you know, a plain graveyard. Next, PG. Oh, this is also Jack. So Jack sent this in, and I must have renamed it wrong. Gorgeous shot. I had to save this of his snowflake. We saw Jack's pieces earlier on in the show, but here we get to really appreciate how the light plays on the dial, and it's phenomenal. Rob says happy 4th, yes, from everyone in the world. Happy 4th of July. I've said that often enough. I hope everyone is really enjoying their day. From South Australia, you can find some, Clinton says. Clinton being Clint, you're the gent who sent in the 2254, right? And Nefarion saying, how late am I? Running with the dog. We've been going for about 3 hours at this point, but don't worry, there's lots still to come. Just in this small period, this small space, you're going to see some great stuff. So thank you for this, Jack. Again, got to love a snowflake. Got to love some texture. Next from Raymond. I think Raymond is known to send us lots of Vostok pieces. And this one is called a MWC W10. I don't know the story behind this, but it's kind of like a Franken watch, if I'm not wrong. It's assembled through parts using the same inspirations and motifs around the W10, typical way the dial has been arranged. And we've spoken about military-inspired field watches long enough in the past. But yeah, great looking piece. Can never go wrong with a W10 inspired watch, for sure. Got to keep on motoring. Robert sends in, thank you for this, Raymond. Robert sends in another Breitling, would you believe? Breitling Super Ocean Heritage, two-tone, which is what we never see on this page. 42 millimeters on a rubber strap. And they did such a great job with the way they addressed this model. Again, falling into the line of reissue dive watches. Can you believe we've featured so many on the show? The Super Ocean text. I mean, how classy is that? That is just so dynamic and unique. Everything. The B logo, Breitling in general. It's a very dressy, I've said this about the watch, I think in the video, it's a very dressy inspired dive piece with no numerals around the bezel. It was one of those 50s era watches that, nice hour hand, Thomas says, yeah, gotta love a broad arrow. It's one of those watches of the time that didn't necessarily understand the uniqueness of a bezel and how practical it was. But in saying that, it captures a time period very well. And Jamie's saying 42 or 44, this is a 42 mil. Fits very well. Overbuilt, but I mean, not really overbuilt, I wouldn't say. It rides the line nicely between parts. Okay, I've got to carry on through these pieces because, geez, it's just getting intense. I can't believe we've already passed the 3-hour mark. Okay, moving next. Thank you for this, Robert, to Sergio. And I think this is the first time we've featured this watch on the show, but it's awesome. Helson Shark Diver. People love these things. And this being a GMT variant, 38 millimeters, can you believe? And I feel like it uses a Swiss movement, a Swiss ETA movement. I really enjoy them. I think what they've done is pretty unique. Helson as a brand have done all sorts of things with their approach over time. Of course, they're taking cues here from the Super Case, but they've made it 38 mils. Now, Sergio says he has a small wrist, but I think, 38 mils and the way it presents itself, it looks like a 40 for sure, but it fits him great. And I think more brands need to start thinking about how they can maximize, but also keep the size pretty relative. Small in scale, but also visually has a large presence on the wrist. Again, I'm sorry if I'm not reaching you in the chat. I've got to get through these pieces or else we're going to be here for like 4 hours. And we have to end off with Russell's pieces as we will arrive in a second. Next from Steve. Thank you for the Sergio. Great looking piece. And we get to see a SeaQ King Quartz. Oh, I love this. I didn't even notice. This is from 1975. Look at those batons. We've seen this before on the show. The way they do the batons on these models, what was the deal here? They're fully stepped. I mean, I didn't even know there was such a thing as stepped batons, but this is an example. From 1975, birth year watch. I think it's great. We have a blue dial. King Quartz being, of that time when the world was at the mercy of quartz and the quartz crisis. This feels to be just the typical, watch bracelet of the time. And it's a stunning looking piece. It really does look nice. I love those stepped batons. We don't see them very often. Jamie, thank you for the super chat. And Mark saying, you currently have 256, Archie's 163. Oh, geez, like I'm competing. I mean, there's no competition. I'm really just doing this for the love of it, and I hope you're enjoying it. It's nice to see a bit of variety. I'm sure Clive is saying some horrible things there. But thank you, Mark. I mean, we're coming to the end of the show very soon, but it's always a pleasure having all of you joining in. Thank you for the Steve. Next, we're jumping to Teng. Oof. Teng sends in another Nomos. It's amazing how you guys somehow work in tandem with each other. We've had a Tangenta, we've had an Orion, and we've had a Neomatic in one space. So the Neomatic I find to be such a peculiar watch. I really don't understand what they were thinking about here. But they wanted to be, they were inspired by automotive racing dials, basically. And there were a few things, I mean, the way they've done texture here, depth, and there's a much more, I feel like there's a much more industrial design motive around the way they've approached these pieces. There's this great stepping to the way the subdials are done, the texture, how the whole dial is actually bold. You see how it actually wraps around the case itself, the highlights in places. And of course, the party trick, the loom, which I don't know how you would read, but that's just me. I think it's very classy. I mean, it reminds me of like 80s era racing dials. Let's see what else is going on in the chat. I'm sorry if I'm missing you guys. So Dustin's saying, how do I make sure if you get a notification? So there is next to the subscription button, I can't even see, I'm running the show, I can't see it, but there is this little notification bell, I think, that you click, and that's what alerts you. I really don't know. Me and the technicalities behind the scenes, don't even ask me. I pretty much write the videos, I put them up, and hope they get seen at the end of the day. Yeah, so to all of you, thank you. And Russell's saying, such clean designs. Talking about this watch, I really don't understand what they were trying to approach here and how everything works, but I do appreciate that this is something that an industrial designer would have a real field day with looking at, because they've probably brought in an industrial designer to look at this. It's so unique and different and strange and peculiar, but I like it. And I mean, Nomos. Now, believe it or not, the next watch we're jumping to in a second. Thank you for that, Teng. This is from Thomas, and he sends an Oris Aquas date. And I love this blend of red and the red highlights here. The next watch we are jumping to is pretty much the ultimate Glashutte watch, which is a Lunga one, but a very specific and particular Lunga one that we'll be seeing in a second. So let's jump to that now after we look at this Oris. I think they've done a great job here with addressing the way that the dial works in tandem with the Yachtmaster style bezel. It looks like a Yachtmaster, as Mr. Perpetual says. Great, I like it. The only thing I've never really liked about the Aquas line is the dial seems too generic. There needs to be something a bit more Oris heavy. I was thinking just an O for Oris for the 12 o'clock position, something to divide up the dial a bit more. As it stands, it looks very basic, but there's been lots of these on the show in the past, and many say that it's just a watch they wear every day, no problems, and it just rocks. You can just use it. Very underrated brand for what you're paying and for what you're getting. We just had a look at the Oris 65, and that's a gem. Yachtmaster on steroids. Okay, carrying on. Thank you for this, Thomas. And next we're jumping to, oops, sorry about the zoom. A very, very particular and special Lunga one. This is one of my favorites for the show. because this is the Lunga one. We featured it a few times before, but it never gets old, and it never will. This is a 1995 Lunga one. Gorgeous yellow gold. I find it so fascinating. So the story behind it is this was the first that was ever produced that really pushed Lunga and put them back on the map. And I think it's incredible. Tillman has said to me, who is the guy who sent this in, solid back. You'll see it in a second, Russell. He said to me that this watch has basically doubled in price that he bought it for back in the day. And I'm pretty sure he got this in the 90s or early 2000s. Oh, it's beautiful. And as Russell just mentioned, solid back, there's your example of a solid back. This is how you can really differentiate the two, or the old gen from the new gen. The new models all having clear backs, and the solid back was the original from the time. So this is really the ultimate of the Lunga 1 line. There's not much better than finding an original. There's always a bragging right saying that you have an original in the family. And Edward's saying up, down. Yeah, it's always good. Is that something that they didn't include in the later renditions? I can't think of the modern dials off track. But yeah, stunning. It just is stunning. Simple, clean, clear, basic. Asymmetry. But the beauty is in that asymmetry. And I did a video about this as well, talking about the golden ratio and dividing up the dial. It's incredible. When you draw some construction lines through the dial itself and seeing how everything lines up, mind blow. So yeah, the original, you can't really get much better than a 1995. And Tao is the gent in the chat saying, yes, the movement is fully finished as well. He is the owner of this watch. So Tillman, thank you. And next up, I called this the Constellation. He's just enjoying the scenes back here. But he also sends in a Globemaster. This is the watch he just loves wearing around. And really, once you have a Lunga 1 from 95, you can pretty much wear anything and get away with it. I think that's just the rules. We love it. I mean, send the Lunga 1 in for every show. It definitely doesn't ever get old. But the Globemaster is another example. Funnily, we featured all the original Constellations earlier on. And this Globemaster is the epitome. It really captures and harnesses 60s and 50s elements and pushes them together into a modern transitional piece. It's great. I think it's a gem. On the NATO strap, though, it's a bit divisive. I don't think everyone loves that. But what I do enjoy is looking at the jean texture next to the texture of the strap and the blue on the dial. There's a nice relationship there. Talking about colors and use of materials and texture there. Rob says, nope. Looks like Hobbiton there. Kind of does. Really does. Amazing how the stepping in the background and the environment. Tao, you can maybe tell us where you're based. That would be cool. But the Lunga 1 is absolutely stunning. As Russell says, it is gorgeous. And Russell is quite a aficionado when it comes to collecting time for pipeweed. This even looks like a Hobbit on the beer itself. That is amazing. So there we go. Hobbiton. We've got a German variant of Hobbiton. Vineyard Resort, Mr. Perpetual says. Okay, going to carry on through. Tillman, thank you. Oh, here we come. The next model. Tom. Now, Tom sends in, as we come to the end of the show, we're going to see Royal Oaks. We're going to see some Lungas, Datagraphs, some Panda Daytonas, and then some gorgeous Pateks and some more Lungas. This is when it really gets good. Classics never get old. Megan, that is so poignant. Thank you. That sounds like the coffee talking. Okay, so Tom, 1875, J. Sewell of Liverpool. This piece, I don't know the full story. I can't remember. But let's just carry on through. We then jump to the movement shot. And you can see that it's not a keyless movement. You have to actually wind it with a key at the back here. I think you do. Yes. So this piece, as most enthusiasts can probably tell, this is a minute repeater. And all in all, I mean, it's really a watch of its time for sure. We've already funnily, we've looked at an American-inspired model, very German, this being the English variant of how they would approach their watchmaking. Look at that balance there. Absolutely stunning. So I'm taking a wild guess that one spring allows you to wind with a key. You wind up for the movement itself. The other key for the minute repeater. So this being a minute repeating chimer, I mean, everything is hidden behind the base bridge at the back here. But it's just incredible. Seeing a watch from 1875. It has basically 10 years above and beyond our man Juan's piece. But still, 18 karat gold, made in Liverpool. and it still works like a dream and a charm. Let me try and catch up with you in the chat for a second. Let's see. This is a banquet tonight. Clive, you're lucky. Yeah, I fully agree. Underachieving watch collector. And let's see, Dustin. Is that why they call it keyless work? That's exactly it, Dustin. This is the first time we've actually seen a keyless movement on the show before. The idea is basically that before you had a winding crown at the top here, you would have to manually wind it with a key that would be given. It's quite unique. It's quite there's quite a charm behind it, but it's those external things that you don't really want in hand while you're doing this job. But just look at the screws and everything. Can you believe this watch is what, 140 years old? Clive, you can maybe help me with the maths. It's just incredible. And everything, the coin edging is still intact. Remember, it's a minute repeater. It's the highest complication you can get. Also, officer's case back, semi-officer's case back, they call it. Absolutely beautiful. Tom, you've sent in a gem. And yeah, we can do more. I'd love to do more pocket watches in the future because it really is, it captures that time. I mean, the Liverpool text, you can see all hand engraved, and yeah, it's amazing to think, what would the world be like back then? 1875, the peak of remember, this is the peak of the Industrial Revolution. And people in general, I would imagine the gent who owned this would have probably been working, or being an owner of a factory or a farm or something else. He definitely wasn't just a run-of-the-mill person. He definitely had a high rolling, high banking position back in the day. 1875, Industrial Revolution, when the UK, when England was a complete and utter nightmare. Thank you for this, Tom. Next, we're jumping to T. Taylor, who's usually in the chat. I think I saw him earlier. The images aren't the greatest, but that's probably my compression. I don't know. But we have what he calls the Fab Five. And let's carry on with, probably was a YouTuber, Kukuru says. Such a joke. So funny. So all of you guys in the chat, again, 145 years. Thank you, Marcus Agrippa. And how old are you, Marcus? I'd like to know. I mean, everything in context. You must be, what, like 1,300 years old by now? You're doing pretty well for your age, I must say, Marcus. 73 Math, thank you for another superb show. Yeah, don't change this format. You'll get some amazing watches. Yeah, I mean, it really is a joy. I really do enjoy the not only the engagement, but the variety we get to see. So thank you, 73 Math, as always. And you're the gent who loves sharing your Zenith. Please send in your Zenith next week. Gotta love an A3, A4. Marcus Agrippa saying I'm over 2,000. You're rocking it, man. So let's get to the Fab Five, as sent in by T. Taylor. Work on your math. He's over 2,000. Thanks, Triforce. So from left to right, we have a Panda Daytona. We have an Overseas. We have one of my favorite Nautilus in the family, which is a 5726. And then we have this gorgeous chronograph that I can never get the reference right. And then we have a datograph. Let's have a look at them in a bit closer detail. So this being a unique variant of the chronograph that we saw earlier, this being platinum and titanium, platinum bezel, titanium case and bracelet, and also platinum polished interlinks here. And this format is particularly unique to this model with the slate gray dial and the blue accents. It's very clean and unique. It's amazing how we get to the end of the show and we still get to see the gorgeous pieces on show. Correct, using Latin plura. Yeah, Marcus, it's a laugh. So your birthday cake is basically a bonfire. Fantastic. So really, yeah, so we're starting. Let's get through these pieces, the Fab Five. So we have this gorgeous AP. Maybe Russell can tell us in the chat what these references are. I'm useless. The longer datograph. This being an old variant of the datograph. I love this. I've handled the white dial variant of this model, but the black dial says something quite different. Marcus Agrippa, you'll enjoy the fact that there are Romans on the dial for you to appreciate. I don't know if you understand batons. That's a bit too modern for your taste. But the datograph, it's quite, I'd imagine this is platinum. Datograph back in the day only did come in platinum in the beginning. And just everything, the reverse panda aesthetic, the gorgeous large date. Having this watch in hand, it feels like a lead weight. I'm sure Russell and many of us can attest to that stunning piece. So we have a black reverse panda dial, just the simple things like the way Lunga is addressed on the top and the way the tachymeter runs around the dial. It's beautiful. And what I really enjoy about this collection, we're going to, did I miss it? I'm sure I addressed it. 73 MAF. You did say, you did. Superb show. Please don't change this format. I definitely won't. What I do want to get is a better microphone. That's the next step. I need a proper inbuilt microphone. So there's a bit more bass to the voice. I try my best to speak with a lower register, but that doesn't always work. Might push you to sleep though, which is a problem. Carrying on. Panda Daytona 116500 LN. It's when it comes to what Rolex represents, what should I say, what the market really represents nowadays, this being the ultra hype watch. I'm going to carry on. Let me just see what's said here by Triforce. Marcus may be 2,000 years old, but Rolex has him on the Daytona list since Middle Ages. Last we heard, we had a bundle to get bumped up on the list. So I'm trying to think, but crowns, when were crowns really incorporated back then? We might find that the Rolex name is a little bit too young for Marcus. It's funny though. Yeti, as 73 Math says. And Clive saying, I need 2 turntables. That'd be good, hey? Mixing some music in the format as well. So, gorgeous looking piece. We know it well. But one of my favorites, actually my favorite in this selection, that we don't see often, the reference 5726. I love the way the complication has been addressed on this watch and just how it sits. You can see why. Symmetry, cleanliness, the way those dials have been arranged, or should I say those windows have been arranged. It's so streamlined for what it is as a format, as Zane's saying, nice. I'm sure Zane can appreciate it. Oh, Yeti as in Mike. Blue Yeti. It's not a bad idea, 73. I might go for Rode, though. Go a bit more hardcore. I don't know. We'll see. As a combination, I think this is my favorite Nautilus in the family. The chronograph is nice, but just the way the complication has been arranged, the cleanliness and the symmetry everywhere. Marcus was Jesus' maths tutor. Yeah, Marcus was older than Jesus for sure. I mean, he is way BC. 5726, beautiful dial. Love it. It feels like the real transition from the 5711 to the more modern take on how the Nautilus should be arranged as a watch in the line. Then VC Overseas on bracelet. I mean, we had a look at one of these already. It's just amazing. T. Taylor, I think you were in the chat earlier, but as far as a Fab 5 collection goes, I like the fact that the watches you've chosen are not cliche, apart from the Daytona. Everything has its own place. I like that the Royal Oak is not your standard jumbo, that your Nautilus is definitely not the standard. The Overseas is just a gem. What I like is the Overseas kind of represents what you would expect to see from a Nautilus or from a AP in this line. And then a datograph. I mean, the datograph just caps it off. And I love the fact that of all the pieces, the datograph is the one that flies under the radar the most, which I love. And it's probably platinum. I'm pretty sure this is a platinum piece. Love the contrast. Stunning. What a great collection. Thank you for this, T. Taylor. Next, would you believe, Wendy is a viewer of this channel, and she is a lady, and she actually watches the show, which is impressive. She is probably the third lady who watches, maybe the fourth lady who watches the show. And she shared a Junghans quartz that she just loves wearing. She says it's versatile, usable, small, easy to wear. I think it's pretty special having a few ladies watching the show. She is a lady, 73 Math says. Yeah, I mean, come on, I've been doing this for 3 hours, 3.5 hours almost. You can imagine my brain is a bit fried. Datograph is platinum. Thank you, T. Taylor and Russell. So yeah, two-tone Junghans as a quartz piece, woman's watch. It's great. Does everything you need. I also love the fact when you have a woman's watch that has a bezel, because I think nowadays women are starting to enjoy the idea of an added feature to the watch, and they tend to use them too. I'm not talking about watch collectors. I'm saying just women in general in the space. Get a good voice mic with good pop filters. Yeah, use proximity effects. Thank you, Meeson. I'm going to refer back to this. That's very good. Look at Rode NT1, not the NT1A. Thank you, Meeson. I'm really considering a Rode mic, which would be fantastic. Megan's talking. Neil, thank you so much for the super chat. You guys have been amazing. Really, I cannot thank you enough. Spiderweb bezel. Clinton says, hey, that's a very good point. You notice how the bezel has that knurling that runs around. It has that effect. It's just great. Wendy, thank you for sending this in. We've been running for 3 hours, so you can imagine, I'm losing it here. I'm really losing it here. It's great to see that a lady is watching the show for a change, as well as Megan, as always. So getting into this, William sends in a GB, a Great Britain Timex from 1969. And we know William because he loves sharing his OP34. This is one of his favorite pieces. And it has one of the most vibrant and varied dials that you'll ever see. I'm no lady, I'm a woman, not Robert, with a name like that. So the champagne effect is gorgeous. We've seen it in a few lights before. And normally William shares his shots in this green neon light that we get to appreciate some various color changes. I really enjoy the format and the layout here. But it's a Timex. I mean, what are these? I don't know what these pieces go for nowadays. This being an original from 1969, I think. Well, no, it's a recreation. I don't know. It's funny how we can end the show with a Timex. You know, we've been running with like everything, and we jump onto Timexes, and that's just the way that the cookie crumbles, where the format lies. And jumping to this OP, I'm really considering a 34mm Oyster Perpetual. Is that bad to say? I don't want my watches to tell people what I'm wearing. I want them to be subtle enough, but elegant. And there's one particular 34mm Oyster Perpetual that I've been looking at that I think would be such fun to wear. Okay, so Williams watches, thank you for sending these in. You're normally in the chat. And let's get to the bread and butter of the show. So we're going to end off the show with a few pieces, courtesy of Russell. And let's end off. So for the next, I would say 10 minutes, let's discuss these pieces here. So Mark's saying we can tell you're young to go into toilet humor, but also I've been twice to be young again. It's funny. Yeah, sorry about that, Mark. My blood vessels and you know, pipes are pretty clean, so it's a bonus. Right, so we see what's on the screen, ladies and gents. Williams Watches was in the chat. I'm pretty sure I saw him earlier. Right, so we have a Lunga Odysseus. And what happened is that Russell received a twofer this week because of what's been going on and shipping and everything happening. He's had a hard time receiving the pieces he's ordered, but Zane saying, Russell, no, you didn't. Yeah. So he picked up a Odysseus. And I feel bad because this is a watch I've kind of torn to shreds a couple of times before the show. When it comes to thinking about the brand, you can say the same thing about the Nautilus and the Royal Oak and how they don't represent their respective brands, but that's just my take on it. This watch, just, you can see that it is a Lunga. You can see that it takes the elements and uses the right pieces. You stole my allocation, Zane. Don't worry, I will show it. I have to put you out tonight. So you can see all the elements that have been taken and used here. The way that the Datomatic, a completely new movement, shared. The day-date complication, the sub-seconds. You see all the typical Glashutte elements. Also love the texture. Russell is such a gem when he sends in these shots because we just get to see all the little details. And don't worry, it gets better. This is it when it's in a little bit of a darker off, and the light's a bit more offset. And here we can see that the texture to the dial almost looks like starburst. You get to actually see the starry night to it. And his feedback on the watch, if I remember him telling me, look at the red 60 at the top. That's really nice. He said that the bracelet is incredible. It's so comfortable. It feels so rigid. The way you can adjust the clasp on the fly is simple, nice and easy. Just in general, it must be a great wearing watch for what it is. I just find it so conflicting still. It's probably going to be that way for me forever. It's when I think Lunga, I think Datograph. I want 1815 up downs. I want Saxonia's, Saxomatics. This hasn't really grown on me yet, and it's probably down to the bracelet, red cherry at the 60. Yeah, Matthew, it's great. What a stunning shot, Russell. Thank you. Marmite piece. I really do agree. The next watch that you shared with us is most definitely the Marmite piece. But don't worry, Russell never scrimps on the details. Here is the brand spanking new. Did I say? I said Saxomatic in the last watch, right? The Datomatic movement fully created for this piece. And you get to enjoy a fully automatic Lunga, which is something you don't see very often at all. And just everything, stainless steel. I love how they've addressed the details on the case. Stainless steel, a Langenzona. I don't think they mention Odysseus. 120 meter water resistant, as we know. Glashutte, it's incredible. I should have hided your cereal. I don't know if that means anything. If there's a faker out there that's going to recreate one of these, I tip my hat to you, sir. But everything, I mean, the balance, the bridge, we know it's all been engraved. I love the fact that you can actually see an external rotor for a change, because that's not something that we don't see on Lunga watches in general. Lungas are known for being manually wound. So the Datomatic, completely new. And of course, it lines up with what they're trying to do here with the idea of a day-date complication. The idea was it to be a Lunga that you can take into the swimming pool, that you can wear every day, use, take it overseas and holidays. I think that's what the CEO, his name's Wilhelm, right? He lives most of his time in South Africa, which is pretty funny. He lives in Johannesburg, I think. And you can tell he's got quite a heavy South African accent, German South African accent. His whole idea behind this watch was to basically say we need it to be something that can be taken overseas and worn by the pool and worn as something more robust when you're dealing with your kids and everything. A swimmable Lunga. Yeah, basically that's it. So yeah, it's a Marmite watch. It's a watch that I don't really know how best to describe and explain. It's not something that sticks in my mind when I think Lunga as a brand. And I'm missing all of you in the chats. Showcase watches and the showcase watches here. I thought you went to sleep. Yeah, for all of you who've been a part of the show, it's amazing. Is the Odysseus a snapback case? No chance. It can't be. It's a screw-in, surely. It has to be a screw-in. I was actually expecting separate. He hasn't even taken the stickers off the back. I was expecting to see separate screws that go into the back in various places. I'm pretty sure it's your standard screw-on case. Lunga, say what you like about it. Even though the watch to me feels kind of weird, they know how to finish and make their pieces. Okay. And catching up with the chat a bit more, GM Shadow Trader saying, Don watch. Yeah, it sure is. Is the Odysseus snappy? Great show. Remember, 1 hour of time difference equals 15 degrees of longitude. Ooh, Eric, yeah, you know. It's going to be a great video on Thursday. Okay, no, wait, so we're not finished yet. Don't worry, there's one more watch, the most divisive of all in this selection. Here we go. Let's get to it. Should I jump to it now, or let me first, I want to address the chat a bit more. Love the Lunga. I've noticed the lug stickers after you took the pics. They're now gone. No, don't show. Zane, I have to because it's a watch that I freaking love. And everyone seems to be hating on this watch so much. I don't get it. Okay, let's get to it. Got to drop it. Patek Philippe reference 6007A. So this is the 6006, but as an anniversary piece made of stainless steel, released to commemorate the opening of a new Patek workplace in Geneva. I don't know the full story, but no, Neil says. So this being stainless steel, I think they only made 1,000 of these. I really like this watch, and so many are saying they don't, and I think Fahim was one of the gents who said so, because they feel it's too manufactured as a watch in their family, and I can agree with that. I mean, when it comes to talking about dials and how Patek addresses their dials and their approach, this feels much more like something that's been pushed out of an assembly line, in the way that the numerals have been done and arranged on the dial. And the real debate is that this seems to be a watch that's stolen ideas from FP Journe and other brands like AP, and I find it hilarious. I really do enjoy it though. And what I love, this is one element I love, the numerals aren't polarizing. And they run around the rotation of the dial, which I cannot get enough of. If you want something that sings, to me at least, love the fact when numerals can actually move their way around. The texture on the center, I find it quite peculiar. Kind of reminds you of sound deadening material. But then you've got this roulette effect, which reminds you of, a roulette table. And he also sent in another shot of it in his collection here. We get to see it in a bit more of a, not so much natural light, but fluorescence. I really like this piece. I love the blue. I think the texture is great. Don't forget 30K. It's pretty expensive. I mean, these are collectibles. They stainless steel. I've got to keep up with the chat. It's better on a rubber strap, Megan says. Is this on a rubber? This is on leather now. I don't know what this material is. It's almost like a nylon-ish fabric. I don't know, canvas. But people seem to really not like it for what it is. But I enjoy the fact that it's modern. It actually looks like quite a modern watch. Patek Philippe should be classic, Neil says. Yeah, I agree. They are, again, divisive. They're talking about watches that are just so peculiar and unreal. This one definitely takes the cake in that line. Curtis, if you're still on the air, just arrived. Welcome, sweltering in Dallas. I wish it was the same here in the UK. It's freaking appalling. We've had a great show. I mean, we've looked at so many pieces in general. Hide leather, is that what it is, Russell? Thank you. Neil saying, I hate this piece. Corduroy, sailcloth. Zane saying, this was the photo Russell sent me when he was inside the boutique taking my allocation. It's so funny. Anyway, I like, what I do like about it is that, like the 6006, with the 6006 has the offset sub-seconds dial that sits at the corner here. I like the fact that it's almost sporty, similar to the 5202. The 5202 is much more like period correct. This to me feels like more of a transition away into the modern space, the modern era. I don't know. But as far as divisive watches go, I don't think you can get any better than a Lunga Odysseus and the venerable 6007 brand new released models in the line. Russell really did a great job showing off these two pieces. I think it's fantastic. It really does end the show well. But when it comes to talking about their brands respectively, I think what these two watches share so much side by side, they need to be classically inspired. That's what people clearly, does it hack? Gee, I don't think it does. It's a good point. Both of these brands, I think, need to be represented by the classics, as we've seen with Datagraphs, etc., etc. Now, these two models are both trying to step away from the classics approach. And I think it's pretty funny how just in this example, we've seen two of them that are virtually the same, both steel sports, both from very highly respected companies. I love the Patek. I wouldn't say I love, I like it. I really do like it. And the Odysseus, I really can't stand very much. So I love that. It's what makes the show so vibrant and interesting. And talking about our love for sports watches, these are two of probably the most sought after steel sports models currently that aren't spoken about a lot. Spoken about amongst collectors, not so much the hype train that is the Patek Aquanauts, Nautili, Royal Oaks, etc. Patek is the master of using their name to get away with things any other company would be crucified for. Could wear that Patek anywhere, Dustin, and that's the thing that I like so much about it. It doesn't look like a Patek, which is a good thing and a bad thing. It's versatile. It looks like something that you've just picked up as an everyday wearing watch. So yeah, there's lots to talk about it. It's wear it all day long, Megan says. Great debate around these two pieces. Nice to actually discuss them in a bit more detail. And Tom, great way to spend the Sunday morning here in Oz. It's a pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure. I can imagine it must be really early there for you guys. Lunga will be on the leather soon. Oof, I hope. I'd actually love to see not only leather, but also see it on a rubber strap, because what they did, I know we're hanging on this a bit long. We've been running now for 3 hours and like 37 minutes. What really sits with this watch so well, and what I think they've done excellently here, is you look at it and you see that it is a Lunga. From the way the case is done, just the case styling, you see how the dial has been arranged, and the handsets, and the windows, and the sub-seconds. Everything speaks to Lunga's language. It's the damn bracelet. Can't get over the bracelet and the way they did it. There's just something about the attempt to get these links to just form around each other. They could have really streamlined it a little bit more, in my opinion, really. But I find it polarizing, very polarizing, and that's the way we are going to end the show. I think we've had a pretty good time, and just chat about Rich and Rolex and Russell and rubber strap would look great. Leather, like a brown leather calfskin, would look incredible. What's wrong with the bracelet? The one element that I just don't enjoy too much, it just looks too over heavy. It looks too rugged for what it is on this watch. You know, Lunga is supposed to be elegant and graceful. I made a video. The video, if you look it up on Google or on my channel, I say my further thoughts on the Lunga Odysseus. And I make an argument saying Lunga has done some incredible chain work with their bracelets back in the day. Beads of rice bracelets, excellently done. That seem so much more bulky. That's a better word. Thanks, Truth Fears. That seem so much more elegant in line with what they do. I mean, just imagine getting rid of the lugs and the bracelet and just integrating a simple mesh style bracelet on top of this. Mix it up, keep it classical looking, but I just feel there's a huge juxtaposition between the classical inspired dial and the more modern bracelet, if you know what I mean. But it's an extremely comfy bracelet. I mean, I can agree. It must have the robustness of an Oyster and the comfort of a Jubilee together, the way it blends. Yeah, but it's just amazing. You've all been so great on the show. I really hope you've enjoyed it. The variety has been intense, as always. Zoom in again, 73 Matt says, for sure. Let's have a good look. Texture, radial effect around the outside. It's just absolutely stunning. They really do know how to handle their dials and their movements and everything in between. Also the small details like the contrast of the minute track that runs on the outside, the silver effect of the lighting. And if we do jump to the darker effect where it's in more direct light, you get to see just how dark the dial gets. Starburst on the finish. Absolutely stunning. So yeah, you guys have really been, all of you in the chat, this community feedback, this is what makes the show so incredible. We really have shared our love for sports watches, for sure. That seems to be the theme we've followed during the show. So what I'm going to do is close this off. We've been running now for 3 hours, 40 minutes, I think. It's just incredible. It never seems to dwindle, I think. The show just continues to go on and on and on. But it's a joy. I mean, we've looked at everything from reissue divers to vintage, modern, neoclassical, etc., and it never gets old. So as always, Clive, absolute pleasure. Everyone is saying thank you, Mark. Without giving too much information out, I'm now in bed and my wife woke up, as you said. We have a great conversation about rubber on leather. Oh, that is so mean. So everyone else, Junior Johnson, all of you who are commenting in the chat, Jamie, Shane, all of you, I really hope you have a phenomenal weekend. I really hope the weather clears up in the UK. I was really expecting to enjoy some sun this weekend, but sadly not. But everyone else in the world, you Americans out there, happy 4th of July, breaking away from the Union Jack. To everyone else, have a fantastic Sunday and a great start to next week. And as I've said, there are going to be 2 videos coming out next week. One where I semi-tear the Tudor the Tudor blue balls to death. I tear it apart a little bit. And then on Thursday, we're going to be looking at the longitude problem and the amazing story that belongs to John Harrison and how he pretty much changed the world. Don't know how, I'm still editing it, but who knows? We'll see how the editing works. Tom Austin says, I sent more pictures of my SeaQ for the next show. Thank you. You can all keep submitting watches in. I'll be saving them for over the next 2 weeks. But as always, you're all gents, ladies and gents. And 73 Math, thank you for the super chat. Russell, again, thank you. All of you have been a part of the show. Have a superb rest of your weekend, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers for now.